hope everybody's doing well, and please feel free to enjoy your breakfast and get as much as you like. This morning we have basically two items on the agenda. As you can see, we're going to talk about curriculum instruction and assessment and SPLOS guidelines, and then our current projects and efforts towards SPLOS 6. I would say, just to preface the curriculum instruction and assessment information, Dr. Lee and her team, Dr. Simpson, and then we'll be presenting today. And just a few things. You'll hear some consistent messages about what we're doing instructionally. You'll hear about your data. You all should have access to all the data. We didn't send you a document full of data, but you have access to a file, electronic file, so you can see or at least review that data on your own time. You'll see that that data has the historical data since we've been doing GMAS, 2015 all the way to 2018. It has the increase or decreases from year to year, and it has targets. You'll see district-wide and school-level data. Dr. Lee and her team will basically share what we're doing to move that data from where it is to where we want it to be. Bottom line, we're trying to move the data, but we're also mindful, as you'll see in the presentation, of some of the challenges that we're addressing through our instructional efforts. You'll see that as a district, and I'd like us to be clear, people always ask the question, what are you all doing for STEM? What are you doing for STEM? And you'll see we don't approach STEM as an add-on, but within our instructional program, we're developing all the skills that we should be developing that employers want if students are prepared for STEM careers. That critical thinking, creativity, collaboration, and communication. Those are what we call the four C's. And so you'll see the work is very much aligned to our strategic plan, and feel free to jump in, ask questions, and I guess if you prefer Dr. Lee as we move along,
yes.
And we'll keep moving. Okay, so Dr. Lee.
Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
How's everyone doing? Good.
Oh,
It's Christmas.
Is the air room?
The air, I got it. We'll see. I got it.
It's important. Thank you. It's important.
With my pressing curl.
So you all in front.
He's trying to hold you guys.
Reminded me of my mom when she said that. My mom used to say press and curl.
Natural, then.
I am natural.
Okay. So you all, good morning again. It's always a pleasure to be here to be able to share with you the updates for curriculum and instruction. And as you stated, teaching and learning is the heart of our district, and there's often a African proverb, where they ask the question, how are the children? And when you can respond, the children are well, the children are successful, then we know as a whole we're doing a remarkable job. And so I would like to start by introducing the team that will be presenting today. There are several of us, but I would like to introduce specifically the presenters. So we have Ms. Ebony Brown. Ms. Ebony Brown is the K-5 Language Arts Content Teacher. So she will be presenting on the foundation. Dr. Tanya Clark, our Mathematics Coordinator. We have next to her, Ms. Regina Willingham, Social Studies. Wallace, I'm sorry. We have two Reginas and three Ebonys. So Regina Wallace, Social Studies Coordinator. Maybe later she'll be able to share the panel discussion and the movie scenery that occurred this week. Janetta Greenwood, our Science Coordinator and Summer Learning Coordinator. We also have Ms. Elisar Gray. She is the Secondary Language Arts Coordinator. And then Ms. Christy Heath. Christy is the Advanced Learning and Intervention Coordinator. And then, of course, our fabulous boss, Dr. Simpson. He oversees school leadership and improvement. And so curriculum instruction fits right into...
It's a method to why she made that comment.
Yes, be prepared. So you would notice, you all, you have your handouts in the blue folder, but there is a handwritten page, so the pagination aligns to the page number up here. So page 3, you will see a list of all CIA team members and the various team members that comprise each of these So just pre-prep, as Dr. Beasley mentioned, I invited everyone to a team drive. We won't pull that up right now, but at the end of this opening portion, I'll walk you through how to access the data reports, which show school-by-school performance for the Georgia Milestone, as well as school-by-school performance on our early literacy assessment. And so we'll navigate through that drive using your technology device, and of course, everyone should have handouts. If you do not, let us know. All right, so our purpose, as Dr. Beasley already shared, is to provide an update. We have the beginning of the year performance data to share with you how our students are performing at this point in the school year, instructional expectations, and in March, we shared many of these expectations. So it's not about doing something different, it's just this year going deeper with it and making sure it's a greater impact. And then more importantly, how are we monitoring and supporting the schools? Because that's what we are, we support schools. So we always start with our why, the why we do the work. And I think we have taken the vision wholeheartedly, and if we're going to be a district of high performance where all students are prepared to live and compete successfully in a global society, then that means our daily mission has to be empowering our students. And I saw empowered students at this week's student advisory, where those young ladies and gentlemen, they were dressed nicely, they posed thought-provoking questions, and so they were really engaged. We want to make sure all of our students feel empowered to achieve their academic and personal goals. And then specifically the work of curriculum instruction aligns to strategic goal 1, to increase academic achievement as evidenced by our various assessments and standards, as well as by 2023, 5 years, school years, to have at least 80% of our students proficient or distinguished based on the Georgia Milestones assessment. So again, just imagine a community where 80% or more of your students possess college and career readiness skills. So I would like to start by posing a question to you all. When you think about our graduates, when they leave Clayton County, how would you like to fill in this blank? So when students graduate from our school district, how would you like others to describe them? Students who graduate from Clayton County Public Schools are definitely what?
Prepared.
So prepared, I heard prepared, what else?
Leaders.
Leaders, what else?
Confident.
Confident. What else? Other behaviors. One more. Dr. Beasley?
Critical thinkers.
Critical thinkers. Yes, so prepared, critical thinkers, leaders, all of those skills really fit into the work-ready skill set. And if you think about your day-to-day work, our day-to-day work, do we not have to display these skills regularly? There are many problems to solve, and so we need our students primed and ready. And so while these images may reflect careers, this is what we want to see occurring in our classrooms. And we saw evidence of this summer with the STEM summer camps. They were highly engaging, and the students had an opportunity to really apply many of these skills and develop actually many of these skills. So this is a visual, again, of our goal. Everyone, we're aware, 80% in the next 5 years. And what you would notice when I take you through your specific school data charts is that each school has its own goal for the next 5 years. So of course, in order for us to meet the goal as a district, each school has to contribute its part. And so this just depicts 80% of students ready to go out into the workforce with the skills necessary. I just wanted to highlight really Dr. Beasley's efforts to spread a mission of a commitment. And he often states that in order to be committed to high performance, we have to be high-performing leaders, high-performing teachers, high-performing parent members, high-performing community members. So that commitment is very prevalently spread across the community. And then coherence. So the strategies and practices that we'll revisit today, they're consistently being implemented at each grade level in each content area. And of course, we can't do this work alone. So our current reality. I didn't want to go back through all of the Georgia Milestones data as a whole because we went through it at the June meeting. And so just on average, 1 out of 4 students is passing or possessing proficiency or distinguished. And so that 1 and 4 does reflect incremental gains, but we, of course, want to make sure that we're deepening our practices so that we can get greater gains. So just take a quick moment to look up here. These are the current reading levels based on our students, well, based on the end of year's Georgia milestones. So we have grades 3 through 8, the number tested, the percent below grade level, the percent on or above grade level, and then you see all of the high schools. So all of these elementary and middle schools feed into these high schools. And you see the percent at or above grade level. So the question I'm going to pose to you is, what do you notice is the difference between students' reading levels and their proficiency levels? So I just shared that 1 and 4 demonstrates proficiency on the standards, on the Georgia milestones, 1 and 4. But when we look at the reading scores, almost about 60% on average of our students possess on grade level reading skills. So what do you notice in terms of the gap? So Ms. Davis said they're not good test takers, which I could infer from that. When they show up for the test, there may be gaps in their mastery of the skills and knowledge that they should have learned. So when Ella Star presents, she's going to speak to the alignment, because the students are reading on level at an average of 60%. At minimum, we should be at 60%, because the often barrier that we hear, the students can't read the text. But actually, based on this data, many of our students can read the grade level text with about 75% understanding. So I wanted to share this. We all have a Lexile level as readers. We have a level of comfort when it comes to reading a text. So a person has a Lexile and a text has a Lexile. When we approach a text and it's easy for us to read, or we have the skills, that's really within our Lexile. When we're reading something that's more complex, whether it's the vocabulary, sentence structure, that's stretching us. And if our students are not developing their Lexile level to read the grade level content, it's frustrating. They may disengage. And so what we would share is what we're doing to, again, make sure that when our students get grade level content or above, they have the Lexile level.
Another thing we need to do is introduce our students to the verbiage, the language of the text, because it's a lot different from what they read from day to day. So as we look at the verbiage of the language of the Common Core test, we kind of need to teach them how to go from there, because it's not that they can't do it, they just don't understand the language of the text.
Yes, and I will share with you in your drive, there's a document, it's actually called Test in Hand, where we are talking to teachers about looking at the items and doing exactly what you're referencing. What do you notice about the vocabulary? Are you using it? But not just the teacher, who else should be using it? The students and parents, yes. So if our students take ownership of that language, you're right, it won't be so demanding. So you all, Georgia said we have to stretch our Lexiles. So these shifted this year, Mr. Christopher.
So when a student gets frustrated and disengaged, how does the teacher know? And how do you fix that?
So when a student is frustrated and disengaged, the teacher should already be aware right now of students' reading levels. They should already be able to predict or determine which students are going to struggle with this text. And so in our training with teachers, we're training them on how to survey a text and already determine what's probably going to be complex about this piece. It could be the background knowledge that the students may have, but it also could be the language in the text. So that's why we have the readiness tools that iReady, Achieve 3000, Odyssey, that just create a personalized learning path to build those skills. But we really want, when teachers are one-on-one with the student, to show them how to use the comprehension strategies to get into that text and glean something from it. So one of our high impact practices is questioning. So making sure that as a teacher, I set a purpose for reading. Instead of just saying, okay guys, let's read. But no, as you're reading, I want you to pay attention to the author's claim. What is he saying about uniforms? So there are a couple of things that we're trying to train teachers on and leaders on how to support when students come to class to kind of prevent or mitigate that frustration, because it is frustrating.
Another thing we do, Mr. Christmas too, what I like to do with the students is, let's say for instance, if I had an 8th grade and he's reading on 5th grade level, I give him those 5th grade books too, you know, just so he can start off there, and then I can take him where he is and move him where he needs to be,
Yeah.
and try to get books in their interest too.
Excellent. And that's a great collaboration even with the media specialists. When you're teaching a certain theme, and you, let's say it's the Great Depression, it's written on an 8th grade level, and then you bring in text. But you still give them the 8th grade, but you bring in text within their readability level.
I think also one of the reasons that we don't get the scores is because they don't know what is expected as far as responding to a question.
Yeah.
So you also need to teach, if we taught children the type of responses that need to be given, regardless of whether you're reading on grade level or not, you can still get a higher score on the test. And also our parents, because a lot, I hear a lot of parents say all the time that, they get homework or whatever, we change, as far as our assessment, what we're looking for. And so we also need to do those things as well. Because the reality is that most of us probably are not reading at the grade level that
43%.
right.
43% of adults do not read at grade level.
Right.
Yeah, no, it's not. I saw you at the perfect age. Okay, so I want to highlight, of course, our graduation date. I think everyone's aware of the remarkable gains and the strategic efforts that paid off. And so you notice in that far right column, all of those green arrows. And so for the first time, we're looking that we're at 70% or higher. We have 2 schools at 100%, and we have a couple, about 5 at 80% or higher.
7 or 8%.
7 or 80% or higher, within 100, yes, 7 or 80% or higher. And so we want to continue to increase in this area, and you all know the strategic goal number 2 is to be at 90% in 5 years, but I foresee us exceeding that goal based on the track we're on. Yes.
One more thing that I had brought to his attention, you know that there's a study guide for parents for the Common Core. So that's why I said, let's just start giving it to them early so they can start working with them at home.
Yep.
It's online.
It's on, we have
the
it,
Department of
we share,
Education website.
yeah, well, we have it on our web, we share it every year, and we did hard copies out at our parent meetings. But Monday, we're sending a communication that reminds them of the link to our website. So it's a study guide for parents as well as for students on how they can start practicing with those skills, along with test taking tips.
I have a question though. While I'm very, very proud, of course, of the 2 schools that I really don't consider to be, I'm glad that they have the 100%, but I don't consider them to be the real schools. Are those true cohort scores? Because I know that some of those kids that go to those schools don't stay there. So are they truly 100%? If they get put out and sent someplace else,
But
are you not counting those or
Well,
what?
so there's a process they have to go through matching at the end, where they look at students who are no longer maybe in their cohort, but they have to code them. I think there are about 7 codes, and they have to say whether they were deceased or they enrolled to another school. They're just different codes. So based on how they did their matching process, it materialized into 100%.
So to your question, Ms. Corey, let's say a student started at Elite Scholars, right? They're enrolled, so they're part of that 4-year cohort. But if that student, for whatever reasons, they decide they want to, that student can't go to Elite Scholars anymore, as soon as that student is withdrawn and enrolled at another school, then that new school is responsible for that student's graduation.
Okay, because that's what I'm saying. I know they're not, because I've heard a couple of principals that are a little upset because they have some of their students that have been put out. And they end up with them. And then they get I know, like one told me they had somebody that has like, they came and they probably failed like 4 or 5 classes there, but now they're on their road. But I'm very, very proud of them. I was really, really proud of Mr. Blocker. I missed going over. They had a celebration. I didn't make it to. because I know he's really, you know, I mean, I was really, they done knocked out my Riverdale. I said, I gotta get Miss Miller Brown. Miller Brown was the one that was, the queen there, because, you know, like I said, we got real schools over here in my neck of the woods. Yeah, the real ones.
I just have a question, how the changing the Perry Center, because those kids used to fall under the other schools, and now they're their own, and, you know, we've got their first year. How did that change those numbers?
So the strategy was that around last September, October, we started looking at the students who were at that, it would be practically 5-year cohort. The students that were at least one grade level behind. And we looked at all of those students from our high schools and provided them with an opportunity to obviously go to the Perry Center at that time that ended up becoming the school, where they could go and double up on credits, obviously, and meet graduation by the end of May. So ultimately what ended up happening is that in January, we looked at the students that were at least 2 grade levels behind. So these students typically had not experienced any academic success. They were at least 1 or 2, some 3 years behind, but they were what we would call the overage underachieved. Because of that lack of academic success that they had not experienced, then that academic apathy sits in. We didn't want these students to drop out. The goal was to get them to graduate, beyond what it would do to positively impact our graduation rate, but the goal was to get them to graduate. By the time they got to Perry, these students who had, for all practical purposes, some had given up, saw that there was a light at the end of the tunnel for them to graduate. So what we ended up doing is just not only shifting them, because we didn't want to make it look like this is a dumping ground. This was an opportunity for these students to double up on credits, meet graduation, but we also provided or matched the resources and interventions at the Perry Center as well for those students that obviously had some deficiencies or had fallen behind in some years prior to that. So when you look at the data, obviously, with them having 34%, when you compare that to the MRESA schools and some throughout probably the entire state of Georgia, even at the alternative level, our students perform better, and Clayton County did better than all of the alternative schools or similar schools with that makeup. So the strategy is obviously, while we enroll 600 this fall, that number has to go down, because if it does not decrease, then it's going to appear as though it is a dumping ground. The goal is to reduce the number of students that are the overage underachieving. That we have students that entering 9th, 10th, 11th grade, that all of them are on grade level. So ultimately, that's what we did. That was the strategy. And so obviously, all the other schools took a bump up because they didn't have to bear the brunt of those students that were at least 1 or 2 years behind.
And as a reminder, a lot of those students, they were in cohorts that they should have already graduated. And so that number reflects that. And so, like if they were already on, if they were already graduating with their cohort, then Perry would have a higher grad rate. But they were already, the district has already taken a hit for them because they did not graduate with their cohort. Does that make sense? Now, but I want Dr. Simpson to speak to the point about decreasing the numbers at Perry. We know that the effort has to occur in the 9th grade, because it's often in the 9th grade that the kids are not getting the credits that they need, and then once they're off track in the 9th grade, then clearly that impacts them graduating on time. So Dr. Simpson, speak to what we're doing with the 9th graders.
So we know who these students are actually before they get to high school. I mean, we have to be honest. We know, we identify early on with the overage underachieved population as early as the 1st grade.
And what grade is that you identified
We-
as low as what?
As low as the 1st grade.
We have all their names, and we know who the kids are.
And so now, as you know, as a couple of conversations that we had on yesterday, now we know that we have to specifically and strategically identify those students and provide them with that extended or those additional resources and interventions either before, during, or after school. So we're looking at a couple of different models. One, a twilight school, for an example. At the end of the day, these students are provided that opportunity to remediate and do credit recovery early on, so that as they enter the 9th grade, because what we saw in the 8th grade, see what happens with those numbers, they multiply. When you think about the number of elementary schools we have, then you look at the middle schools that we have, that number drops. But the overage, underachieved population from the elementary schools, that all converge on the middle school, so that number compounds itself. Well, then you think about it from the middle school to the high school, it happens again. While we might have 4 or 5 of them at the elementary level, well, we got to catch them so that they don't get to the middle school and they don't get to the high school. But in the event, obviously, that we see that we've not caught those students, we've got to provide those resources so that they don't negatively impact the cohort as early as the 9th grade when they've been underage and overage, underachieved since the 3rd, since the 5th, since the 7th grade. We've got to attack them with those resources and those interventions that 9th grade year and keep them on track. Therefore, they don't have to hit the Perry Center and end up being off cohort, if that makes sense. Okay.
I would say the other thing is that when the earlier you find them, then you can show them success earlier, because once you fail and you fail and you fail and you fail,
Absolutely.
then you think that's what you are.
That's right. That's right.
And so if you can get that in 1st grade, 2nd grade, 3rd grade, I mean, we build jails based off 3rd grade testing scores. That's been the truth for years. So, I mean, I really love the idea. I mean, we've got to do something for everybody, but the earlier we can get it, the more productive, the more balanced, the more, proud these children can be of what they've done. I mean, even if you have if you can see, I had a hard time because I went ahead and I did this extra work. I am here. It's going to make a
So
difference.
Dr. Lee in her presentation is going to talk about what we're doing to do just that.
To do just what?
Address that early learning.
Okay,
You
that
know,
was my
So
question.
everything is about the foundation. It really
And the
is.
foundation
It's
is
broken.
and I'd like to see us look at our RTI process too, and making sure we catch them through the tier 2 and we gotta get tier 1 right first.
Yeah, we sure
Make
do.
sure we get tier 2 and tier 3 right, that way we won't have them going to the different.
That's great, but
grades.
all
I want to hear
of
let's
it.
hear from Mr. Christensen, we'll let it talk to him.
Okay,
Okay, we talking about decreasing the Perry Center's numbers, correct? They got 300 people, they got 300 persons on the waiting list right now. How are we gonna combat that? And also, what are we doing with those 19-year-olds who have 5 credit hours that's over there, that's not doing this?
So the goal is for them to do something. That's why they're there.
But they're not.
Right. So this question that came up for a principal. What does a principal do when they receive a child that's 19 years of age with 5 credits? And we have to be very, very transparent and honest. What's the likelihood of this child graduating? Very, very slim. Unfortunately, that child or the makeup of that child typically is going to cause some major challenges in your school. We know that, and we have to be honest and realistic about that. So what do? Do we jeopardize the culture and climate of our school by allowing for that 5 or 7 19-year-olds that have 3, 4, 5 units to completely disrupt the culture and climate of that school? Or do we provide them with other resources and opportunities that may not be a part of CCPS? So while we are mandated to offer an education to them, it might not be Clayton County Public Schools. There's some other resources and some other programs that are out there. We have to be realistic. Yes, we want to save them all, but for someone that's 19 years of age with 2 and 3 credits, that graduating from a traditional school is not going to happen. We'll provide them with that opportunity at the Perry Center. But if they don't display some level of academic success, that they are progressing and moving along, then we're going to have to find another program for those
So do
students.
you put them in the GED program?
GED is one of the conversations that we're asking principals to have. We're providing them with some other programs so that they'll be able to have the conversation and confidently have that conversation with that parent so that they'll at least walk away with knowing that there's some other options out there. We don't want to be able to say to a parent, no, we can't help your child.
Right.
That's not it. But the options that we have available, the reality of it is that what we can do here as a traditional school is not likely to happen with your child. So we have to provide them with those resources.
Okay, side conversation. GED is taking over here.
Well, it's clearly they have, it's a very robust, one of the best in the state.
Yeah, 400.
Because we,
They're in the 400 hallway. 300 Broadway,
And that's because, that program is serving Clayton County. And when we look at even as we look at our US Census data, there's just a great need in our county. We only have about 18% of our county has a college degree. And so, it's just, we're serving our county, so if we have to look at maybe more than one site, then that's something, but we're serving this county. So we're serving the GED population as we also address graduation at our high schools. We're changing, we're improving the county, but as y'all know, it's just a lot of work. And it does take resources to do that.
And
Greater Center does look like a dumping ground, because you got GED, you got those students who are not, on track, and you have some students that's on track, and then you got, alternative.
But no, not alternative,
What
in
is
terms of this one.
Don't worry, Dr. Lee, you about to jump in.
What is that on the backside?
You mean the,
Virtual alternative school?
yeah, it's there.
It is alternative, right?
Okay, oh, okay.
But I wouldn't say it's a dumping ground, because what
What is
we're
looking
doing,
like?
well, it may look like it because it houses 3 programs there. But you've got someone who does the GED program, Dr. Young does the Perry Academy and the alternative school. But what we're doing and what we should see, because remember, our strategy, what we should see is the numbers of students going into both the alternative program and the number of students going into Perry Academy should be decreasing. And so, I think we've got to give it about another year. I know we met with all the high school principals, including Dr. Young on the other day. So we should see, as a part of our strategy, a decrease in the number of students who need to go to Perry Academy.
But you also have some kids that also go to Perry too, because
They want the
they want an
alternative.
alternative way of graduating early.
They want to earn more credits faster, and they want to get out of high school.
So
I
that's,
would call them non-traditional students because a year ago, we were there and the young man graduated with the valedictorian was a 4 point, I don't remember.
right.
And that young man, is headed for seminary
And actually,
we all needed to pass the
The
thing
need,
for that young man.
we've had this need for a while. Actually, I won't even give the other man a little credit, because that was actually, Dr. Heatley wanted to kind of do this some years ago. And our principals really have been trying to push for this as well, because even though we can look at it like a dumping ground, it does, I think there is some validation, because it does help kids. Because it's bad to have a kid like that that's at a high school, and if you can offer them another way to go, then, that's a good way.
I'd just like to add, I would just ask, plead with you all that you would look at it as a non-traditional
No,
center.
I look at it positively.
And for the students, and I don't know if we're capturing this data, but the numbers of students that we've spoken to that now see that there is a pot of gold at the end.
Right.
Who've not been able to feel or think that they would ever graduate from high school. Now with the experience of having that opportunity and them seeing and experiencing some academic success that they never or haven't experienced in the last 3 to 4 years, those are the conversations and those are the comments that we're getting from the students over there. So the increase is based upon the narrative and the story and the testimony that they're sharing with their colleagues. They're saying to their homeboys and their homegirls, hey, look, man, I was able to catch up. I'm graduating in May. And that's what we wanted it to be. That was the intent. We wanted the students to sell the program. We sold it to the first group of 300 children. After that, it doubled because of the experiences that the students were sharing, which tells us something, that we've offered them something, one, that they got a good feeling from, two, that it went from the heart to the physical. They saw some success and experienced some success that they hadn't experienced in a long time. And then ultimately, they saw themselves graduating at the end of the school year.
Now, I wholeheartedly agree with the Perry Center. I do not want it to become a dumping ground.
Yes, sir.
Because that's where I started.
Right.
When it first opened. And so I helped a segment of those kids, and I understand.
Right.
And so I definitely, I just don't want it to become that.
And so I think this is a great transition to, a lot of this, as we know, really is about the foundation in our entire community understanding the urgency.
Absolutely.
And our kids have to come to us a little bit more ready. Now, they come, we're teaching them, but we just need them to come with greater readiness. And then, as Dr. Simpson said, we're looking at the data early on and trying to intervene so that they don't get to high school and feel hopeless and feel defeated. So I wanted to share with you the data that you have access to, so I'm going to go back and demonstrate. I emailed you all, I shared a link, and when you click on it, it's probably going to take you to this portal. When you go here, you're going to select your Google Drive. And you're going to go to Team Drive. And there's a drive called CCPS board members and CIA. So once you log in, you're going to go to Team Drive, and then click the select the drive CCPS board members and CIA. And you'll have this.
Dr. Lee, that will probably be the only team drive they see, because I don't think there's been any others set up. So she-
Okay, this your first Team Drive? Oh, great.
We're early learning.
Early learning, that's right. And from here on out, the opportunities are limitless.
So
Okay.
you email this up?
So I emailed the link to, can't you see before you have it? So you can click on it.
So that's the,
We're not about
yeah.
But we didn't think we were gonna look at,
Yeah, I was expecting something else. I don't even know if it'll work.
She probably needs to put,
there it is, right
I
there.
get it.
Perfect. And it says via Google Drive, you've been added to a Team Drive, CCPS board member CIA, and then you just select open Team Drive.
I'm glad we found it here. It's something I've been asking for about 10 years.
You may be logged into your personal, so it's going to hit select request permission. And I'm going to come over here and give permission. Now, I will say, because it is on the Clayton County server, you should be logged in with your Clayton County email. So if you have your personal Gmail, it may just send a signal that I have to give you permission, and now you open it.
so just in case you get real bored and you just want to look at a lot of data, this is where you go, okay?
What I gotta do, I gotta install something.
Ooh, Miss Williams got it.
Is Williams out okay?
Yeah, I gotta remember this.
Just log in and remember.
Okay.
Right, and your username and password.
No, I'm not looking.
Okay.
I'll take it.
Thank you.
Okay,
Make sure I got it.
let me show you what's there, so you'll know too.
She's just got a
Perfect.
Great. You've already claimed your account, right?
Yes, I got
Okay.
Okay, so,
I got it.
well, Dr. Bigler, he models and uses technology so well, so we're all trying to become more adept at using our technology, so.
So I keep asking y'all, when y'all gonna let us take a class? Cause I'm
Okay,
shouting,
that's
I
how
need
they-
to treat them at.
Mr. Gore, you can just sign up for a class.
Okay, well, I'm gonna see. I
We
don't
do
wanna-
have Google Drive class,
They
don't we?
don't run me out, like you saying, you know, they try to be funny.
We'll say that you go log in.
I know they be in now.
So that's why I say I gotta think about this.
You know, I have another.
I need to try another thing.
Okay, I got another idea, I just need the other one, I ain't-
So Dr. Lee,
Here we go.
send Ms. Gore to the resource lab and
Okay, so let me just show you quickly what is here, so you can see how the schools are performing.
Yeah, that's what
Okay, so when you go to the 2017-18 GMAS data files, you will select the folder. And then, let me just tell you what you have. You have, starting at the bottom, all of the elementary and middle schools, really four-year performance on the Georgia milestones. I want to click on it after I go through each one just to show you what's there. You also have the high school's performance. You have all of the schools' reading levels, all of the schools' writing, because we know on the Georgia milestone there's a written portion. And then we have the updated student growth percentiles. So I'm going to select the end grade. So when it opens, you're going to see 3rd grade, and as you scroll up, 4th grade and 5th grade, all in one worksheet. At the bottom, you see ELA elementary, ELA middle, math elementary, math middle, science, social studies. Okay, so I'm going to go back to ELA. And you see our performance in comparison to the state and metro area, and then you see all of the schools. These numbers up here represent the school year, 2015, 16, 17, and then our current year performance. So you're able to see the trend of a school, and you're able to see how your schools are trending in terms of their performance on each of the Georgia milestones. So remember, our goal in 5 years is what? To be at minimum 80. And so what we charted out for the schools is essentially their 5-year goal in order to be at 80. So this is this year's school goal, see school year 19, then 2021. So the assistant superintendents, they're working with each principal to be strategic with how they want to meet or exceed this goal. So we just wanted everyone to be able to visualize your end of year performance. Now I had a parent come to me in Kroger, and she said, you know, I see your name badge, you work for Clayton County. My student, my 3rd grader, she's having to read all of these books. She's reading too many books, being required to read too many books per week. And so because I was familiar with this data, I was able to say, well, you know, Anderson right now, about less than really 7% of their kids, 7% of their kids are at level in terms of their language arts. So that just means our kids need to be increasing their reading volume. And so when you're having to go from 7% to a larger goal, which means more students, you have to do more. You have to do more. And so they have to do it beyond the school day. There are not enough hours in the school to catch our students up. And so we need all entities. So I think by you having this, it allows you to see how schools are trending as well as the goals. And then you have the same Excel for high school as well. Okay? I also want to show you the early literacy file that you have. I'm going to exit out of this.
Dr. Lee,
Yes.
are all of our schools doing something, some kind of rewards or something, AR points or whatever the new one is, I'm not sure.
So AR is still a favorite. I will say there's been a different funding structure. So whereas before the district was providing the funding for AR, schools are now using their funds. So we still see it more prevalently in elementary school, in some middle schools, and high schools. We're having to be creative. So Craig Colvin, who's our media specialist coordinator, he's developed another process. It's called the traveling reader. And essentially that's a way for kids to track their books. They have to do fiction and nonfiction. And the assistant superintendents, and I can speak specifically cluster D, that is a requirement with the principal's leadership evaluation, increasing reading volume. And so they have to have a system. So if you don't have AR, you need to have a way of incentivizing our students. And I remember talking to some of the governor's honors candidates, and they said, I was a reader, and I was a reader early. And one particularly spoke to AR and the incentives from it. So it's definitely a tool that creates, an avenue for kids to love to read.
My daughter, when she was in grade school, they had something during the summer that was, I don't remember, one day a week or something, but by golly, if I wasn't following her to the school one day a week so she could take her AR test, you know. And, you know, to be honest, my son was on the other end of that, he didn't care, and when he went to middle school, the media specialist was so excited to see that I was bringing her another one. I'm like, this one doesn't like to read. And she goes, oh, I'll take care of that, and by the time he left there, he's a reader, you know, so, you know, we have to, she got into something and.
But they're interested in too, and it's not just about the Lexile score, so that's what we say, even though a student may have a certain level, you lead with interest. And then you may read within their level, but you want to get kids reading about something they're interested in.
Callaway's doing a good job with their reading. They have children read for bites.
87,153 students, 53 students this year. We honored them at the board because of the number of kids who are reading in that school. Yep. And Smith Elementary was a second to them.
Dr. Lee, Dr. Beasley, can you speak to me for 3 minutes on, no, because I don't want to take up too much of your time. If Cindy can do it, I'm sure she can too, right? So, Dr. Lee.
I got the timer right here.
Can you talk to me about moving incentives and motivation into a community thing as opposed to a school environment? How do I make a single mom that's not a big favor of school and reading and math into a person that pushes their children before they reach Clayton County schools?
That is a complex.
So it's more than 3 minutes.
It is, but it
I
is.
started the clock.
And I would say, one, you have to have access. And so if you're not a reader, or let's say, it's not about you not being a reader, you just have other competing priorities.
You're talking about the parent.
You have other competing priorities. You may be working multiple jobs, or you may not have done well in school yourself. But I think when we connect with our parents, and we have to connect, so it can't be just through documents, we have to connect with them. Letting them truly understand the possibilities that are associated with our students being readers, and how that literacy just connects to opens up a whole nother world for them. And so getting kids access to books in the home, at least their books are present. And even talking about the partnership with our local library and what they're doing, and how we can just go there. We were meeting with United Way this week, and they have what they're doing personally with parents called learning spaces. And these are parents who may not have been great school students or whatever, but they're coming in showing them why reading matters and creating opportunities for them to do wordplay with their children. So just recreating the habits of an environment of being a reader and a literate. And
And I'll just add that part of our work, and we were discussing this, and Emily will mention something. Part of our work is, of course, getting to our pre-K parents who we can get to. But we're also a part of the Learn for Life, which is a regional approach to literacy, where we're getting with all of the pediatricians to help those who are having babies understand the importance of certain things that they should.
We as a system are pushing.
well, we met with United Way this week, and so what's been the challenge is, we provided the list of the pediatricians, but what they shared to us is that there's an individual, Ellen, she's working to kind of break that barrier, so that we want to put books, like Dr. Bean was saying, have that conversation active with the pediatrician, giving the books, giving the literature. Every time they go to the doctor, get a book.
Have we looked into partnering with the insurance companies that provide the health care and the Medicaid coverage to these families?
Not
Because
specifically.
they would use their resources.
Not specifically, and we may expand the partnership as soon as we start building the structure of really touching all of the pediatricians and the hospitals where our children are being born. Like we're developing a packet from Clayton County that we want all the hospitals to give all of the mothers who have just had newborns. That would have very specific information and even games and tools that they can use to help develop these skills that we'll talk that are included in Dr. Lee's presentation.
In conclusion, the reason why I'm bringing this up is because we could continuously talk about, you know, the children that are in our schools. Clem and I just compared 18% college graduate to Cobb County, which is 48%, and Fulton County, which is 50%. All of that talk can go all around in a circle as much as we want, but until we get to the essence of what really creates a good student, you know, we're just putting Band-Aids all over the place.
Well, that's why, Mr. Baker, we're gonna go ahead and skip and come back to the other part so we can talk about that topic.
I saw a poster and I might not have it exactly right, but it says there's no app better than your lap to teach your children. And I mean, if we could just get that in, you know, that kind of poster at our pre-K level and our kindergarten level, and tell parents how important it is to sit there so that children can sit there and see that there's a process. Because I'm telling you, there is nothing more frustrating than me to be in stores and watching children under the age of 2 playing games on their parents' iPhone, and they take it away from them and they scream and holler and they hand it right back to them. And, you know, if it was something educational, I might be able to suck it up a little bit, but it's not. And you just kind of wonder, has that replaced the TV as a babysitter?
But it could be educational.
If it is educational, that's one thing.
But, I mean, if you're trying to, because, I mean, let's go all the way back. I go back to Sesame Street. We say the TV may be the babysitter, but I want to look at Sesame Street. I mean, we
Yeah, and there are good things, but
I think what we need to do is, with our parents, is emphasize the importance, and even to the fact that when you're pregnant, you know, read to your baby in the womb, you know, so, but we had family literacy. We got rid of it, so I think, you know, we're really going in the right direction with.
Let me ask Dr. Lee a quick question here. I know we have about 35 minutes till the deadline to get the content and the presenters. Do you think we should go straight through without questions for a little while? Do you
Okay,
think,
that's a good,
is
that's
that
a
okay
good
with
break,
you?
and hopefully we'll address some of them.
Yeah, maybe you can
Come back
pause
at
at
the
times for questions, but I certainly want to make sure we hear from your team.
Okay, great.
Okay.
Thank you so much. And so I wanted to go ahead and bring Ms. Brown up, Ebony, so that she could speak to the intentional efforts at the foundational level.
Good morning. So when we think about the foundation, we know that for higher performance, the foundation has to be very much strengthened. As students enter kindergarten, we have 7 top skills of readiness that we need for our students to have mastery at, or at least have exposure to. So that way, as they transition into kindergarten, we're not playing this catch-up game that often happens because our students come from just various backgrounds. Some have attended pre-K, some have been at home, and some of the home experiences have developed them to be able to transition smoothly. And then we have a lot of students who have not had those experiences. When we look at the critical facts, the fact is that students, if they are not reading by 3rd grade, we're looking at those students as being possible high school dropouts. 88% of high school students that did not receive a high school diploma, they were struggling readers in 3rd grade. So the key is definitely by 3rd grade, all of our students must be reading on grade level. To do this, we go back to, again, school readiness. When we think about school readiness, it's just not about the child, it is about the whole environment that the student has been exposed to, the family, the community, the early learning experiences, because not all of our students that transition into our kindergarten classrooms in Clayton County are coming from our pre-K programs that we have in our school district. We have a lot of students, of course, that come from our early learning centers, and that varies on what they're being exposed to. So here we have the top 7 skills. The first skill that we have is print awareness, followed by letter recognition, which is very vital for students. Understanding those consonant sounds when they're presented a letter, can they produce the sounds that that letter represents? Emphasizing high frequency words. When we look at our iReady data, as they will discuss in a moment, we find that the high frequency words, it was the lowest percentage, which really was a good thing because the deficit was not there for high frequency words, which means that we're exposing our kids to those words early on and throughout the grade levels. Also, number recognition is vital. Often we have children who, they do not know the difference between a number and a letter. So that is something that we really need to hone in on. Even in our conversation with United Way this week, we were shown another screener that gave us another perspective of student readiness and skills that students need coming into kindergarten. Conventional rules, as well as being able to follow directions. If you spend the first 6 weeks of your instructional time asking students to have better behavior, to sit down, to listen to what I'm asking for you to do, that's so much instructional time that's lost. So if we can have our students to be able to grasp these top 7 skills of readiness, that way they'll walk into kindergarten truly chanting, "Kindergarten, here I come," and that they're ready. We also understand with this that we have an action plan that needs to be in place. When we look at our action plan for K2, we see that we need to have professional development that aligns to the high impact practices that we have in our school district. We also look at our core curriculum. Our core curriculum has a very much sound development in the foundational skills that students need to become proficient readers and writers and also critical thinkers. And then lastly, we do have a population that comes to kindergarten that, or our early learning grades that are ready. And so what are we doing to accelerate those students? So we also are offering enrichment through our core program with Imagine It. We are also looking at recruiting more teachers in our K2 program to be able to participate in our gifted endorsement, because that will allow those teachers to be able to really take those students to the next level. One of the things that we have done as of recently, this was last month, we have Get on the Bus with books on the bus. We have Get on the Bus. We are asking students to get on the bus and grab a book and read with books on the bus. And this is a partnership that's being facilitated through Scholastic, where as students get on the bus, there's a nice little pocket chart, as you see depicted there, and they can pick a book. And while they're on the bus, they're having another opportunity to be exposed to more text, to be exposed to more reading. One of the things that I really like about this particular activity for students, and this is at our Kemp schools as well as Lake Ridge Elementary, this is where we're starting the program, is that I also thought about not only does this help with our literacy exposure to children, it also gives a better writing environment. It's a safety, because I'm sure that that bus is probably the quietest bus on the way home, okay? Another endeavor that we're doing this year, we are participating with Jumpstart. Those of you may know that Jumpstart is a nonprofit organization that is a champion for early literacy, and their goal is to make sure that as children walk into the doors of kindergarten, that they are reading and reading successfully. So every year they have a Read for the Record. Well, we are theming ours as Clayton Reads for the Record, and we have pledged for all of our elementary schools, classes pre-K to 3rd grade, to participate in reading the book, Maybe Something Beautiful. Our very own Dr. Beasley and Dr. Nunez will be shown on Channel 24 on October 25th at 12:15, and they will do a duo reading because this wonderful book comes in English as well as Spanish. To take this activity to the next level, all of our students during their specialist classes, they will go to arts and be able to add to their own Something Beautiful mural that will be created in the art class. And then last but not least, we're going to partner with our local government and produce a mural, and the mural will be of our high performance image that Dr. Beasley introduced on last year. And this will be done by our fine arts students at K Pace, MD Roberts, as well as Marcus Stillwell. So we're very much excited about these opportunities because this brings our community together. We are not just doing this in a silo where it's just Clayton County. We're partnered up with also the public library. I have shared this information at the early learning centers when we have our collaborative meetings with them. And we are also looking at Lee Street Elementary. We'll have an after-school program that will do something special with the public library. So we are just asking that everyone, homeschoolers, everyone at home, to just tune in on that day as we pledge to Read for the Record. But again, another exposure for early literacy for our students.
Let me, I just want to say about the bus person, I'm going to give some kudos. I was glad you all did that, but Deborah Lazarus is a bus driver. She has been doing that for years.
Yes.
And down at the river, down on that end of the county.
Deborah
Worked there for years. So I'm
Years
glad
before
that-
that, he
Right.
had students and he had them read books, not that he could read them on the bus, but he actually had them give him book reports. And they were so proud to read, Mr. Rainwater, here's my book report, just little, paragraph or something.
And I think the whole purpose is, in general, just creating a culture of literacy. Like, these are programs and initiatives, but it's really about when we go places, literate people, we pick up books. in our environments, whether at the doctor's office or even recently I was out at a furniture store and they were decorated with books and I was like, oh, I want to look at the book. And so as we give students access to these opportunities, they're going to explore them. So if you have a cell phone there, they're going to pick up the cell phone. If you have more books, they'll pick up the books. And so the bus was just an extension of the school, another opportunity to get books in their hands. And the 7 readiness skills, those are the skills that we want to emphasize when we're working with our parents. Just these are the online apps that you can use that are approved, that we feel that really introduce the sounds appropriately. In the bag of goodies that Dr. Beasley referenced, the letter cards, the number cards. So giving those out, those are simple things that make a huge difference. If kids come to school already with some knowledge of their letters and their numbers and knowing how to follow directions and spell their name. That wasn't up there, but that's just, your name is who you are. So our kids should know how to do that. And so these are just a snippet of some of the efforts, but we're really trying to enhance what's occurring early on, because that is the key.
Good job.
So it's channel 24 back up.
It's back up, it just, we don't have like staff to do like shows and things of that nature. So we're using it to kind of place information.
Can I get my Clayton State interns to
Critically, yeah, that may be a great resource. That would be a
You
great
know,
resource.
to me, something that would really help us
I definitely want him in there.
and all that type of stuff is if Channel 24 was up and, you know, we have all of our different content people. You all need to be on there doing some lessons, like, you know, we're doing, if we're talking about the standards and all that stuff. If you all did a standard and did lessons, and I'm from Louisville, Kentucky, we have a TV that stays on all day long. They have GED, they have different, you know, whatever, math, different subject areas. That would help us extremely. But it just, you know, I just think we need to utilize the channel instead of it just sitting there doing nothing. I know that, you know, we've had some budget issues, but something
We can get it done.
think about.
We'll work, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I have the contact for you to get it done tomorrow.
Okay.
Good morning. I've heard a lot of conversation about creating options and opportunities for personalizing the learning for our students so that we can open up their opportunities for them to be able to achieve at high levels. So we're going to talk a little bit about the how, what a part of the how that we are achieving that with our iReady resource. So iReady is a program that we are using in order to close the achievement gaps in math and reading. The iReady program provides us with an opportunity to personalize the learning for our students because it starts with the data that shows where the students are right now. Then it takes the students and creates a pathway to get those students to move towards grade level and above. If I'm already on grade level, it will allow me to expand beyond grade level. So it really truly personalizes the learning and moves the students to their highest potential. The data that iReady provides us starts off with the beginning of the year fall diagnostics, and it takes us all the way through the year. So our fall diagnostics for this year showed us that we had 12% of our students coming into their current grade level on or above grade level. We had 49% of our students that were already approaching that grade level at the beginning of the year, and then 39% of our students who were 2 or more grade levels behind, and this was in mathematics. But then we can drill down even further and see how those measures were in each of the grade levels, elementary and middle school. So we can see our kindergartners in mathematics were all coming into kindergarten for math, either approaching that grade level, approaching kindergarten readiness, or already on and above kindergarten readiness.
Before you leave that, go back to that slide. Notice a big jump from 3rd to 4th grade. That means our 3rd grade teachers are doing a great job. But we've got to put a little bit more emphasis in those early grade levels.
They're working really hard.
And that's the first year that they take the state assessment. So you know those 3rd grade teachers are doing their part.
And we do see that this mirrors very closely the state assessment data. When we look at the students, the percent that are coming into that grade level, honor or above, of students that passed the previous year's GMAT. The program also allows teachers to drill down to the specific domains. So in mathematics, the domains that it shows are numbers and operations, algebra and algebraic thinking, measurement and data, and geometry. And it allows teachers not just to see this larger group, how well the students are doing, but they can drill down to the individual student and see where are the issues, where they need to be bolstered up, and where are the areas where they're already achieving. So when I'm creating my smaller groups, I can pull together students who are, for the area where I'm working right now, my current standards, pull together students that might need additional support. So when we talk about creating that pathway, I can make sure that they are receiving those scaffolds or those specific structures that they need to help them to achieve where we are today. For reading in our fall data, we saw that we had a sliver, about 1%, of our students who were well above grade level. And then we had 19% of our students that were on or above grade level, 31% who were approaching grade level, and then that 50%, which we saw mirrors our GMAT data, 50% who were 2 or more grade levels below in reading. And again, it breaks down by grade level, from elementary through middle school. The data also breaks down for reading by domain, so it tells us how well students are doing with their phonological awareness, in phonics, high-frequency words, vocabulary, reading comprehension literature, and reading comprehension and informational text. But we also get some information about our different demographics that might allow us to be able to closer monitor how well our full circle of support is working, and whether or not there may be some other supports that we need to bring in that may not necessarily be instructional, but it might be something that's more personal, or that might be something else that the students are going through that we need to help them to be able to work through in order for them to be able to access the learning.
So I just wanted to make a note here, Dr. Lee can speak to this. Notice the large amount of read in phonics and vocabulary, right? And that trickles to the large amount of read in reading comprehension level. And so phonics and vocabulary, clearly vocabulary is across all grade levels, but the phonics primarily in those early grades. And so what we're noticing, and we while your data doesn't necessarily tell you this when you look at your Google Drive, but we've identified schools where it looks like a large percentage of the kids come in ready at kindergarten to read and to do well, but by the time they get to 3rd grade, they've regressed. So they've gone through 3 years of teachers, kindergarten, 1st and 2nd grade, but they're worse off. See, that's a teacher quality issue, and that's a training issue. That's why we're in all those variables. And so principals are now aware of that. They're working with those teacher teams, because we can't have parents bringing to us kids who are ready, but by the time they get to 3rd grade, they're worse off. That just should not be the case. And so those are some of the variables that we're addressing.
And so teachers are able to use this tool, not just to determine where students are, but it also provides them with resources. So when I see that a student is struggling with their phonics, but I know that I need them to be able to read complex text, then it gives me resources that I can use to work with that student to help build up their phonics so that they can be able to comprehend the text that they're reading.
Now let me tell you why this is an important tool as well. If you don't know this, you should. Clayton County has the highest mobility rate in the state. It's 30%. I looked at it, 31%. That means on any given day, 3 out of 10 of our kids are being enrolled or withdrawn, going somewhere, whether in the county or out of the county. This tool allows us, if they're at one school today, if they go to another school, that data transfers so we can just pick up where the students are. Heretofore, before January of this year, we didn't have that ability. And so it allows us to be very prescriptive, personalized learning, but then the teachers know exactly where those kids are. So we're trying to mitigate again for that high mobility rate. That's why our grad rate is as impressive as it is, because we have a very high mobility rate, but clearly our schools are getting our kids graduated, which is important. And so you'll see in the data at some point, college and career readiness this tool allows us to look at college and career readiness, which is very important, because we want kids graduated, but we want them to be able to read text at the college, post-secondary level. And so it's allowing us to monitor that, and also provide students all students an opportunity to increase their, to be more college and career readiness, I guess, increase their literacy levels.
What do you, since you mentioned phonics, what do you do for a child that struggles with phonics?
So we have a prescriptive curriculum that we use at School Read that specifically addresses all the phonics skills, explicitly and systematically. And so what we guide teachers into doing is digging beyond what the whole data looks like to see exactly what's causing kids to not read fluently. Because phonics basically means you can decode fluently and read and actually uncover the word. And so it could be whether they don't have their vowel sounds, they don't have their diphthongs, just all those skills that allow a student to see a word and be able to say that word. And so we have a very explicit program that addresses that.
Do you ever think that some people just don't learn to read phonetically like I don't?
Right, so that's when, so Ebony shared
So I'll just keep on trying to make them learn phonics, even though it's just not gonna work.
So,
Does anybody ever just think maybe this child won't read phonetically, we may try whole words or we'll try something else. Do you ever do that?
well, based on the English words, 90% of them can be decoded with phonics. So you almost have two systems. For kids who were just going to give them the whole words, you have to make sure that they are truly exposed to a lot of reading. Because as soon as you come across a word like transcendentalism, that's not a word you would see in your everyday language. But if you know how to segment the multi-syllables, right? So and that's why you also see sometimes when the kids get to third grade, the words become multisyllabic words. And so when they start seeing even simple words like constitution in multiple syllables, so the issue with kids not learning phonics is that you can't possibly expose kids to all millions of words. So they have to know how to break up the parts to derive the meaning. And I know people will say, well, because I don't think I learned phonics. I don't think so. Maybe. I don't remember. But where it comes out is in your spelling. And so now we have tools that assist us, but many times if we didn't learn phonics, there are certain words that we may misspell, especially when you're trying to figure out if this is like detergent. Is that all E's? Is there an A in there? So those are the skills that we want our students to master early, and if they master them, the phonemic patterns before second grade, they will be able to see a word like transcendentalism, at least be able to say it. Then we teach them what it means. Now they can understand the text.
What's that word again?
Transcendentalism, diaphanous. Any of the words that have
Clearly, she's very intelligent.
I got stuff in imagination.
Could you stop showing off?
I know, right?
To your point, people have to understand that we do a blend. While phonics is very important, there is a role for whole language.
Right.
But in order for kids to even be successful with the whole language approach, you have to teach a degree of phonics. Right. Because there are some words you will not be able to figure out unless you know how to phonetically figure them out. Correct. And so that is an important. But even beyond that, we got to keep it going. But even beyond that, what you all have to learn is this: all of us, our brains naturally are developed for language. Our brains are not developed for reading. And we have to really work to train our brains on how to read. And that's why you gotta have trained people who understand how the brain makes connections, understand the process of teaching reading to teach reading. That's why we want all of our teachers reading endorsement. Just remember, your brains will naturally develop language. We all develop language naturally. You don't naturally develop how to read. Your brain has to be taught that.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, so Dr. Lee has already spoken to you all about what is a lexile. So as a reminder, it is a measure that indicates readability as well as text complexity. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why it matters. So we know that if our students have developed their readability, it impacts the range of career options that are available to our students. And we talked about in the beginning about our able learner, the student that is leaving our district. And we want the student that leaves our district to have a range of opportunities and really to
their choice and not to be limited because they don't have the literacy skills needed for success. And so this slide provides a snapshot of the Career Center from one of our Readiness platforms. And what I like about it is that it provides students with a lexile range for a career goal that may be an aspiration for them. And it shows them side by side what is their current lexile level, and then what is the lexile that is needed for their career choice or their career goal. So for a student who is aspiring to be a dentist, they would need a lexile range between 1370 and 1510. And so this is a ninth grade student, his sample from his Career Center. And so we see that this student currently is at 1155. He is on track. He is college and career ready on that pathway. So that by the time he leaves Clayton County Public Schools, if he desires to be a mechanical engineer or to be a dentist, he will have the literacy skills expected for someone in that career.
And our kids see this when they take the Achieve 3000 beginning of the year assessment. It asks them about their career aspirations. And so that's where we're able to derive this data.
I don't think I want to know that
Sure.
myself, just because I know my SAT score told me I wouldn't graduate from college. So I'm not sure I would want, it's a good tool, but I can also see a little downside to it, but go right ahead.
All right, and so that is one reason why it's so important that our students gain readability on or above grade level, but it's another reason why it's so important is because this is the type of text that students encounter throughout their instructional day. They represent the various text types that students will encounter in English, science, social studies, and math. Notice how each of these texts are they start at a 1285 and they go up. But our current reality is this student over in the corner, who's a high school student with an 800 lexile that is aligned to what students achieve in 4th grade. And so we know that all of our students in our classrooms have very diverse needs, but they all are required to meet the same expectations. And so what are we doing to help our students meet those expectations? One thing is that we've implemented readiness tools. And so Dr. Clark previewed for you the beginning of the year benchmark data for our elementary and middle school students. At the high school level, we implement Achieve 3000. And one of the assessments that students have to take at the beginning of the year is called the level set. And the level set yields a lexile, and it gives us baseline data for where our students currently are. And so this image depicts what % of our current 9th through 12th graders are on track for college and career. And so I know that you all can't read maybe clearly these numbers, but this top bar, if you see the very light gray bar, is above 80%. And so just by looking at the bar graph, you can see across all of our high schools in the county that implement the program where our students currently are.
Elsa, may I just pose a question? You all, in real life, do you read more fiction or nonfiction?
Nonfiction.
Nonfiction. So many of us, unless you naturally read literature, you read more nonfiction, our financial statements, our medical reports, all of that. And so, Elisar, could you just explain the difference? Because I see a gap between what the GMAT stated versus what Achieve 3000 is reporting.
Yes. And so Achieve 3000, the lexile sometimes or oftentimes is a big difference between what we get on the Georgia milestones and what that program yields, because Achieve 3000 is just informational text only. And we know that informational text tends to be a challenge for our students. It's more complex, the language is technical, the structures are technical, and so you'll notice that gap. But if we can get our students college and career ready using this indicator, then they are ready for whatever awaits them when they graduate. And what we've noticed is that this reading, the lexiles yielded from this program really matches what we see. We talked about that gap early in achievement. It mirrors what we see in achievement for Georgia milestones, which indicates that on the test, they're being exposed to more informational text. All right, so what are we doing to ensure high performance? So we have 3 key drivers. The first driver is that we've established instructional expectations that are being implemented district-wide. I'm going to go a little bit deeper into those 3 expectations in a minute. are increasing our teachers' capacity to provide high-quality, rigorous, and relevant instruction. And we are increasing our leaders' capacity to monitor and support that instruction. And finally, at the district level, we are monitoring and measuring our impact that we're having. And so this picture, this is almost an equilateral triangle. And I love it because all three sides of the equilateral triangle are equal. And that's pretty much our goal for curriculum, instruction, and assessment, to ensure that all aspects of the work that we do, curriculum, instruction, and assessment, are equally as rigorous and equally, because they're all important. And so you will see that the Georgia Standards of Excellence, this is our curriculum, and we know that it is written at a rigorous level. We know that our assessment system, which is the Georgia Milestones Assessment, is written at a rigorous level, and it aligns to what students are learning through the standards. And so our goal is to ensure that our curriculum support materials and the instruction that we're providing to our students are equally as rigorous. And so how do we define rigor and relevance? We have partnered with ICLE to adopt Bill Daggett's rigor and relevance framework. And essentially, it provides us with a common language and a common understanding of what rigor is. And so ultimately, we want our students to take ownership of their learning, and that looks like students working in Quad B. Students are doing the thinking, and students are doing the work.
So you all, I just would like to mention on page 5 in your handout, Elisar, we can go back to the previous slide. We shared page 5 with our students and had them you basically reflect on the type of questions they're receiving the most. And without going into a lot of detail, the questions at the top right in the D quadrant are where we really want our students to reside. These are not where their questions are always coming from or from where they're coming. And so we want not only our teachers posing these higher level questions, but our students being able to have this language in their conversation to pose those type of questions. So that was a tool that we shared with students. And they were able to basically articulate, many of those questions they're receiving are in that Quad A, low level, but and not accelerating them to where they need to be.
So to make understanding rigor manageable, we have further defined rigor for our district by zooming in on 3 practices: evidence-based writing, academic discussions, and higher order questioning. And so when it comes to academic discussions, what we want to see are students initiating and participating in discussions among themselves as well as with their teachers, using the content language and also furthering their knowledge about the content. For higher order questioning, we want the teachers to pose questions to students, again in that Quad B, but students to address those questions fully as well as to justify their thinking. So not just giving a very cursory surface level response, but a full, deep response with justification. And as Dr. Lee said, we also then want to pass the baton to our students, again, having them to take ownership of the learning and them to start facilitating the discussion and posing their own questions as well. And then finally, we define close reading and evidence-based writing as students constructing written responses that fully show that they have learned some information from a text that they have comprehended and that they have justified their claims with evidence. And we know that's so important, especially in this world of fake news. It is so important that our students have discernment and that they are able to distinguish between what is a credible source and what is credible information and what is not. And so we want to see our students be able to do that in writing. At this time, I'm going to turn it over to Janetta, who's going to show us the high impact practices. So the 3 that I just talked about: academic discussions, higher order questioning, and academic discussions in action.
Good morning.
Good morning.
So Dr. Clark as well as Ms. Grant, they spoke briefly about the importance of decreasing that academic gap, that achievement gap. What I'm going to talk about is really about decreasing the opportunity gap, because we have to provide students with the opportunity to engage in those practices that we're saying are so important to be college and career ready. And so we have our district instructional focus, which includes academic discussions, higher order questioning, and close reading and evidence-based writing, but how are we allowing the students to engage in that and allow them to have the opportunity to practice those skills? So across the curriculum, each content has made sure that that is embedded. And we're doing that through English language arts, extended research projects, mathematics, performance-based tasks, social studies, compelling questions and document-based questions, and then science, we really engage in argument-driven inquiry. Now, these are just a couple of examples. We do a lot more in our curriculum, but these are the highlights. We wanted to make sure that you have a good understanding of what that looks like for a student. And so I am going to focus specifically on today the argument-driven inquiry for science. But just note that everything that I just named is reflected in all the other content areas. So what is argument-driven inquiry? I just want to point out some highlights from that. It's basically an instructional model that focuses on students driving the learning. And it does a great job at doing a more integrated approach of allowing mathematical practices to be embedded, as well as English language arts skills. And then it also focuses and lends itself to students figuring things out. We talked about problem solving as a big component of our college and career readiness skills. And so we want students to know how to do that before they get into the college and career environment. So we're giving them the opportunity to actually take ownership of their learning versus just being told about information. So most lessons in science will have this type of approach or this type of design. So close reading in science is not always going to be something they actually read. We do close observations as well, because the purpose of close reading or close observation is to pull out information that we feel like may be important. From there, we have asking questions, which is a paramount or a very important part of science, because not only does asking questions lend itself to the teacher and what the teacher does, we want the students to engage in that questioning process, because that's the way we learn about and figure things out in science. And then academic discourse and writing, evidence-based writing. We want students to talk about their understanding. We want to see how they're thinking, because you only can change your thinking or adjust your thinking if you actually are able to share and have conversations with others and pull information from them to help enhance or make your thinking even stronger or better. So I'm going to demonstrate very briefly what that close reading experience looks like in science. And I'll show you one version, and then you'll have the opportunity to see another version very quickly. But we will actually look at a phenomenon, and I want you all just briefly for like 10 seconds, think about what you're observing, what you're noticing. So I don't want you to try to have an answer to what you're observing. I just want you to recognize what you're seeing and think about what questions that leads you to have. So what did you notice? Looks like fun. So do you want to try? What else did you notice? Did you notice anything specifically in the video?
The weight of the individual seemed to be heavier than those leaves.
Okay, so the weight seems to be heavier than the leaves, okay. Anything else that we noticed in the video?
The leaves was very strategically placed there.
So the leaves were strategically placed there. What do you mean by strategically placed there?
Meaning the way they fell, they knew the probability of them falling, they were going to fall on something cushiony.
So it seemed like the leaves were there on purpose in that organized manner, okay? Anything else we noticed about the leaves?
They wrapped around the person.
They wrapped around the person.
We never really seen once the leaves started spreading.
So once the leaves started spreading, you said once it started spreading. So what happened initially before they spread? He hit the leaves, but did the leaves immediately spread?
No, they stayed in place.
They stayed in place. They stayed in place. Okay. So how can we turn that into a question? Because we just made a very important observation. We heard strategically placed leaves. We heard that they wrapped around the person eventually, but they didn't move initially. So in science, we change things to questions by just changing the first word, right? How, when, what, or where. So how can we change that observation that we just made into a question? Why did the leaves stay in place? Okay. Why? That's a good question. Did you have a different
Well, I
one?
was just gonna say, what caused the leaves to stay where they are when the net clearly went below?
Okay.
What caused that to happen like that? Why didn't the leaves go down with the
Yeah.
net?
Exactly. So those are great questions. So now we have something to investigate. Okay? So as the teacher, I'm not gonna tell you the answer because I want you to stay. But I want you to come across what the answer is through a process. Okay? So if you would like to participate, and this is really gonna take 30 seconds, I want you, because you're in pairs already, and I'm gonna demonstrate with an empty cup because I don't want you to see what's gonna happen. And you probably already know what's gonna happen, but knowing what's gonna happen and why something is happening are two different things, right? Okay? So I want you to just hold the cup in front of you. You're gonna get up out of your chairs in a second, and you're gonna take 5 steps quickly and stop abruptly. Okay? And I just want you to observe what happens. And then I want you to share with me very quickly what happens. And you don't have to participate, but hopefully somebody gets up and give it a try.
I'll stay away from you with the stuff.
You already know. 5 steps. And remember, your arms should be fully extended.
It's already there.
Supposed to hold straight.
What's your conclusion?
Okay, everyone have a seat.
Hang out with it. Outside of the expressway.
That's the new sobriety tip, someone.
Okay, so one, it was hard to release that control that you typically want to have to not allow something to happen. So anyone want to share with me what they observed?
Ms. Burrows would like to.
Water came out of my water.
Everything went fine until I made that stop, and then the water stopped.
So water came out of the cup when you stopped abruptly.
Right.
Okay?
Water.
Go ahead.
Water came out of my cup before I stopped.
Okay.
Because Ms. Corrine has a lack of coordination.
Because the water's to the ground, and it's not stationary anymore, it's in motion.
Oh, we have a word there. It's in motion. Okay, so we have movement taking place. Okay? So I hear that there was water in the cup and that something was making it not move, but once you got into motion, something did not prevent it from continuing not to move. Okay. So we have some other words that maybe we can pull in. There's some more science words. I heard motion and then acceleration. Okay, so we went quickly, we took quick steps, right? And then we stopped abruptly, right? So we applied something at that point. What did we apply?
Resistance.
Brakes, resistance, and in science we also use the word force.
What about inertia?
Okay, so we have our gifted students, and we have inertia, we have velocity, and all of those are great terms. And everyone is more.
He hating on me because I read the whole word.
That's great, and what we're going to do, we're not really going to do today, but what typically would happen, they would continue to do additional investigations to gain better understanding of inertia, to gain better understanding of acceleration and things of that nature. But we want the students to go back to the phenomenon, because that's the whole point. We want them to figure out what's happening. And it's like little breadcrumbs or pieces to a puzzle. So they experienced something, they made some connections. Now, how does that relate back to what I saw here? Because we talked about our initial question about the movement of the leaves. Why didn't the leaves move when they initially fell through this? Okay, so I want you to keep that in mind. But typically, this is how students would hopefully engage and have some academic discourse, but eventually, they will have to construct an explanation using plain evidence and reasoning to justify their understanding of what's taking place in that phenomenon. So, the ADI that they would investigate in next would be mass and free fall. So how does mass affect the amount of time it takes for our object to fall to the ground? So they're connecting pieces. There are different things, and notice I did not front load things like Newton's first law, Newton's second law, Newton's third law. It's going to come out in the conversation eventually, but right now I want them to take their experiential learning, because that's all about experiences, and actually applying it here. We want our learning to have those 4 C's: creativity, collaboration, communication, critical thinking. If we give them all that, then they are going to be those college and career ready students that we want them to be. And we're doing this not just in high school, not just in middle, kindergarten all the way up to high school. This is the expectation based on where they are. So ADI has 8 stages. I'm not going to go through them, but just note that in every single stage, there is opportunities to do those 4 C's that we talked about. They have the opportunity to engage in a close reading and design methods and participate in argumentation sessions and to write. And that is so important, that none of the stages are deleted, because if you delete a stage, you delete the opportunity for learning. And remember, it's about decreasing that opportunity gap, right? So, very quickly, if you look in your packet for each stage, we have scaffolds for students because we recognize that not all students have necessarily what they need to be to achieve at that level that we want them to achieve at. But we provide them with scaffolds to help them with their thinking. But every scaffold is not meant to be permanent. So eventually the teacher should pull away that scaffold to ensure that they're able to do it on their own. So because of time, I'm just going to skip right here. We want to make sure that students are figuring things out rather than learning about. Okay, because that's really what it's about now in society today. They have access to Google. They can find anything as far as any information they need, but do they know how to use that information to figure something out? And so that's what all content areas are focusing on in designing their curriculum to ensure students have that opportunity. Because decreasing that opportunity gap is going to lead to decreasing the achievement gap. So I talked about the 4 C's already, and it ties directly back to those top 10 skills. We want the students to engage in complex problem solving, critical thinking, creativity, active listening. We really want to allow them to use the tools of our content to practice the skills that colleges and careers are looking for. So student impact, I'll leave you with this last little bit. This is actually one of our students in the district. When learning is both rigorous and relevant, high performance is achieved, and I'll let her speak to her experience.
Tell me what school district you're coming from. I came from Fulton County. Did you guys use ADI in Fulton County? Okay. So how do you like this experience with doing ADI in the classroom?
I like doing ADI because we actually get to do hands-on experience instead of being told results. You know how they do in the books and that's what they did, but we never do that because we had experience and you could do it in a different time and not know what it is like today.
Awesome. So you want to do more experiments and investigations like this?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Okay, and so now I'll turn it back over to Dr. Lee.
In our final 5 minutes, you all, we're just going to speak to the training that has had to occur, as well as how we're monitoring. So just let me pose a question to you. How do you think training for principals has had to look different?
You mean the principals training their staff?
Yes, so how we're training principals. How might that have been different based on what we're requiring of students? How might that training be different now?
Has to be a lot more modernized.
Modernized. Okay, what else may be occurring in the training?
It needs to be more hands-on, just like the kids are hands-on.
Yeah, gone are the days where the teacher is the only one who receives the truly hands-on experiential experiences with the learning. And so what we've had to do in our trainings is make sure that we are having ongoing sessions with the principals, as well as our coaches, our department leads, and our teachers. So Janetta actually did a science symposium with principals and APs where they experienced this. And then the other day, Cluster D had their professional learning center, or community, and in there, the teachers, the principals, these are principals, and their coaches were actually practicing close reading, constructing evidence-based responses. And so the comments they're making, some say, I'm not seeing this. But now you know what you should be seeing, what you should be requiring, and when we have trainings, why your teachers need to be there. And so when we're looking at our data, we have to look at it more strategically. Which teachers are not adding value? Or as Dr. Beasley spoke to, which ones are not helping students continue to grow? And so in our training sessions with each stakeholder, it takes more time, but it's more meaningful. They have to practice and apply so that they can really know what it looks like and what it should sound like in the classroom. And so,
Dr. Lee, before you leave, I just want to say, because you all as a board need to understand, a lot of people ask, well, why did you only have 25% of the kids performing at a certain level of mastering the standards? And some people think that improving achievement is very easy. But what Janetta just showed you is part of that instructional work. But on top of that instructional work, we've got students who are already with deficits that we've got to get rid of, right? And then let's not throw in the discipline issue. Let's not throw in kids coming from very adverse home situations, and we're mitigating for that. So I think we have to be informed that first, what are we working on? And then when people ask questions, we need to be informed enough to respond. That we've got instructional strategies, but we're also addressing discipline. We're also addressing the deficits that our kids have in reading and math that sometimes they come to us with, and that deficit continues because no matter where you come, if you're already behind, when I teach whatever I'm teaching you, you may still be a little bit behind until at some point we're trying to get you caught up. But all of those things, we all need to be informed. These are variables that principals and teachers and others are working to deal with in order to move that student achievement in the right direction. And you all, that is some complex work.
Let me piggyback off of you, Dr. Beasley. And I think that this was absolutely, in the 3 years that I've been here, the best presentation I've ever seen for school systems. And I credit Dr. Lee for that, Dr. Lee and her team for that. I believe that this type of presentation has to go out to the community, not the schools, but to the churches and the community-based organizations so that they can see exactly how complicated this is and how all hands have to be on deck with implementing this. Not at the schools, not at a PTA meeting, not at a school, but at a church or a community-based organization, a park or a picnic.
I wanted, since you mentioned about how we're building leaders, I do want to make one point about our APs, because our assistant principals seem to me to be the least involved in instructional. I'm so tired of hearing stories of the APs spending all their time in the cafeteria, doing cafeteria duties and discipline. If we're going to build leaders and have the whole team involved, I wish we could get our principals to try to build leaders within their schools and let them go to the cafeteria sometime and let the APs actually have the opportunity to get out and be involved with the day-to-day instructional practices of our schools.
Well, to that point, Ms. Gore, you should know that the assistant principals are engaged in the instructional process, from being a part of the leadership teams, the data teams, helping to compose of the school improvement plan. They're involved in all of those activities. However, there are duties and responsibilities as an assistant principal that requires them to monitor, supervise children, whether they be in the hallway, whether that be in the cafeteria. But to your point more specifically, when we have principals meeting once a month, following day, we meet with all of the assistant principals. So the information that we're sharing with the principals and the training that they're being provided The following day, all of the assistant principals in the district received that same training. It's also been encouraged since last year, and certainly before I even got here, that principals do a better job and be more strategic at exposing all of the assistant principals to not only duties and responsibilities strictly relegated in discipline and attendance, but the instructional process. So to your point, if we are expected to build leaders and prepare them for positions in leadership as a principal, then we have to provide them with the exposure and those opportunities. Additionally, we have LEAP, those aspiring assistant principals. They meet as a cohort that's been identified strategically by the assistant superintendents, along with professional learning. We meet with them on a monthly basis. So they're being provided the training. And then lastly, it's been communicated that the assistant principals cannot just hide, and that we understand that the reality is that the assistant principals has become unintentionally a safe position. Because when the school is not moving forward or not growing, then the principal has had to bear the responsibility of all of that. We're no longer looking at it from that perspective.
I'm gonna go back to what I said. That's really a nice little spiel you're giving me.
Well, I mean, it's a real spiel.
I would like for you to practice what you just said. That is not what is happening.
Okay.
And in order for you to build leaders, principals can go sit in the cafeteria just like the AP can. Let the AP get out, because really what you all are doing is actually to the point where APs, they may come to the training, but when they get back to the school, they are not involved with the process. Now our coaches are more involved with the instructional. We are pushing our APs out. And I'm telling you that it needs to be the whole team. And I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to work with a principal that involved the whole team. We were all involved with the instructional process that goes into. And I can tell you some hard stories, but I know we don't have enough time. But I'm just saying.
I understand that, and I appreciate it. But based
go to the schools and
based upon my observations, I'm not saying that. But Ms. Gorey, let me say this: the work is so complex now, and to the point where the assistant principals can't just perform duties and responsibilities that will relegate them to just monitoring hallways and doing cafeteria duties. I see principals when I arrive at schools in the morning out on the bus lane. I see principals working in the cafeteria. So, and I don't know, there might be some instances where that exists in small pockets, but all of the principals are encouraged to make sure that they saturate all of the knowledge and information with their assistant principals, because the intent is that these assistant principals will one day want to become and will be provided opportunities and exposure to become principals. If that has happened in the past, I'm not aware, but that is not the intent and that's not the goal moving forward, but I'll make certain to look at that.
And even on this, Gloria, I would just like to add that at the cluster meetings, they have the principals there as well as the coaches. And when we had our strategic planning day, the principals had to have their assistant principals. Now, I would just comment in trainings, and I can look at the team, where do we see the greatest engagement in the trainings? When the APs are able to speak to the standards, the instructional practices. So as a whole,
sure do. But when they don't, I'm gonna tell y'all one more time. Y'all don't have to tell me all of that. Yeah. I'm telling you what's going on in the building, okay? They can speak to it, but it's not happening in the building. Those people want to move up at some point too, and they're not being given the opportunity. And that's my point. Thank you all.
Okay. So let me give Dr. Lee 2 minutes to get closing arguments, so to speak.
Okay.
So that's why we should stick to the 5-minute rule.
I know, it's very quick. So I just wanted, Regina, just quickly, 1 minute to just talk about this slide. Just 1 minute.
Okay, so as a part of the way we monitor and measure the impact of the district programs and initiatives that we have in place, we use certain data reports or readiness tools to help us infer the level of instruction that's taking place in the classroom. We do this through our iReady, as Dr. Clark and Ellisart talked about previously, and also through our formative assessments, which this year is being filtered through our benchmark assessment program. So currently our elementary and middle school students have taken their benchmark 1. High school is scheduled to start on Monday, and we come back and we look at that data so that we can determine next steps for each school and what needs to happen prior to those GMAS assessments.
And so you all, And you'll have access to the presentation, but I think Dr. Beasley said we all should be able to speak to the work. We all have to be able to see where our students are and where we're trying to get them to go, and how no one is a spectator. We're all in the game, we all have ownership, we all have a role. And so hopefully today, been able to expose to you some of the practices that we're implementing, that we're supporting, but also to compel everyone to send a message to the community. We need the partnership, and we need school to go beyond the classroom. And so as these expectations continue to increase, we need our community to understand what the work should be looking like when it's going home and what we're requiring of our students. So thank you for your attention, and at this time, one question.
I got a comment.
Oh,
I agree with Mrs. Spraker when y'all done an excellent job, and thank you for not reading too and knowing your content.
Thank you for your questions.
We can stop, I just wanna know, is the benchmark information?
No, the benchmark will be compiled in Excel. We'll have that in about 5 days, because elementary and middle just finished, and then we'll start Monday. Great question.
All right, let's give Dr. Lynn and her team a hand. All right, everyone, let's take a break. We're actually okay. I talked to Ron, Jordan and I are going to go next, and we're going to be able to get you out of here at 11:30. So let's take a 9-minute break and come back at 10:30.
No problem. Marriage.
All right.
And you've been saying no matter.
All right, we're going to get you out of here at 11:30. Mr. Joseph and I, we've cut the deal, so we think we can make it happen, and much appreciated with his flexibility as well. Just a couple things, housekeeping items. You're getting 3 whole board governance training hours. I think in a couple weeks we're going to come back and we'll get 3 more. If you miss any of these, you're able to look at them on tape to get your hours. And Ms. Williams, of course, is a new board member, and we'll have another new board member in January. They have to get several more hours than you do. We'll all work with them, and I know Sherry probably is in touch to make sure you get all the new board hours that you need to get. So you've got all that taken care of, and you stay legal and that kind of thing. I'm sure this is a topic that all of you are deeply passionate about, and that is the issue of SPLOS campaigns. Our associate, Jordan Daly, is with us today. I think many of you had a chance to meet her. She was in the classroom a couple years ago at Maynard Jackson, I believe. And it's always helpful to have education lawyers who actually know what it's like inside of the school district. And not so much on this issue, she probably didn't see that issue so much, but we're glad to have her, and she's going to do most of walking us through the PowerPoint today. And I think we wanted to give you a framework for the do's and don'ts when a SPLOS campaign is going on. There's certain things that you'll want to leave to, usually members of the community get together and have a formal campaign. They hand out flyers, things like that. You want to steer clear of that. Most of you have had experience with SPLOS before, so this may be a little bit of a reminder as much as anything for many of you. For others, it may be new material. And Jordan is really just going to walk us through what I'll call the framework. And feel free to ask us any questions. I think I'm going to try to hold us to a pretty firm stop time of 11 o'clock, and so we can finish up with some other SPLOS matters that I know you want to hear about from 11 to 11:30. That being said, I might just let Jordan start walking us through this.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you all for having me. Thank you for feeding us. So as Clem said, I do come from the classroom, so it's always a privilege to be able to come and sit in on some of these conversations that are happening around instruction. It makes my little former teacher heart very happy through those. So today we're going to talk about the SPLOS campaign. So before we get into some examples of what you should and shouldn't do, there's really one big overarching rule to keep in mind that has 2 parts. So anytime you're dealing with a SPLOS campaign, there's a 2-part question. The first part of that is, am I using district funds or resources? And the second part of that question is, am I expressing an opinion or am I just doing it for the show? So here's the rule that it comes from. This is from the Georgia Government Transparency and Campaign Finance Act. Here's the rule. And the big parts of this are basically no agency or person acting on behalf of an agency, and that's interpreted to include school districts as well as school board members. And you can't make any contribution to a campaign committee. And of course, contribution means more than just money, it means resources as well. So here's some things you are allowed to do. So we start off on the positive. You can support it while you're off the clock, and if you're an employee, that's a much easier distinction to make than if you're a board member. You can give objective factual information. We said no opinions, but you can give objective information. So this statement down at the bottom is a good example. You can say, SPLOST 6 will fund A, B, and C projects, but you need to leave off the part of, we really need this. So leave out, you can give the information. So here's a list of things you can do. You can work on your own time, introduce yourself by your name and not say, I'm speaking on behalf of the Clayton board, I'm speaking on behalf of the district. You can give informational documents, allow other people to distribute information.
Could you go back one slide, please?
Yes.
Can you define own time?
All the time, yes. And as a board member, again, that's a little more fluid than if you're an employee, because you know when you clock in and you clock out if you're an employee.
Right.
So the example that I think we really talked about was maybe just in board meetings from the dais. It may not be a great idea to say, I, speaking as a board member, support this initiative.
Or soliciting people to vote for it. You certainly can, we'll get into a little bit, but board members have certain flexibilities as elected officials, and not being on the clock, you can have a lot more leeway, particularly when you're not trying to speak to the board during the board meeting. Your superintendent, typically superintendents are tasked with providing information about what is entailed with this initiative, which you certainly can do.
So when you're away from those board meetings, it kind of becomes your own time.
And it's usually a good idea as board members to say, it's just my personal opinion, and typically, once you say that, you have a constitutional right to say what your personal opinion is, and that sort of thing.
So my husband can put a sign on the side of the yard.
Yeah. Well, you could, you're not on your own time, you can put two signs in there, one for you, one for others.
And that's your personal property as well as the district property. We'll get into that soon. All right, so here are the things you can't do. Again, on the clock is much easier to define if you're an employee rather than a board member. We've touched on this a little bit, that you can't express your opinion on a SPLOST referendum or a campaign. You can only give information. So again, these are comments you should avoid. Speaking as a Clayton board member, I support or oppose, but you can't say I as a private citizen or I speaking for just myself, I personally support or oppose.
Well, let me ask you this question.
Yes,
Can I say, when is it, when we say we're not doing it, does it mean actually when it's on the ballot? Or like right now, it won't go on the ballot until March.
We are campaigning right now.
Oh, well.
So you're still talking about, even though it's not on the ballot until March, it's that lead-up period where you're trying to convince people to go for or against it.
Oh, I didn't know we were
The
campaigning.
way the law treats it, it's almost as if the initiative is the same thing as a candidate, so you can think about that way. Think of someone in an upcoming race. Of course, yours is not gonna be on the November ballot, but anyone coming up, even people want to run for something, the next year, it's a distinction.
Well, I guess technically, I didn't think we were that we were campaigning yet until Monday, because I think Monday's when we officially vote. I know we talked about it in the work session. We vote the other night. When we did
You vote on the agreement that you need with the election board.
Now, did we do it Monday or
We
we
voted
doing it
Monday.
this Monday? Yeah, I was saying I didn't think we officially were doing it until Monday.
Well, I should have clarified that, and that was my mistake. So if I were running for president in 2024, even if I were still saying, hey, in 2024, you should think about me, even though I'm not technically campaigning, I'm pushing towards that direction, if that makes any sense. Yes,
I
ma'am?
have a question, I kind of maybe don't know what this, are you allowed to work at one of the polls if you're on the ballot?
Oh, that's
So
a
they was
good
looking at
question.
stuff like, you know, they like, looking for volunteers, and I thought about it, but I'm like, my name is still on the ballot, so.
Yeah, I
wouldn't
wouldn't,
work at
I
one of
wouldn't
them.
think so if you were actually on the ballot. You as a candidate. Now, could a school board member serve for a SPLOST referendum? I'm not sure I want to say what the answer to that is. But it would be up to the Board of Elections officials. I think it'd just be important to disclose that information.
It's probably just not worth it. It's probably just not worth the risk.
Probably not. And that's something that George's going to cover, which is a little strange about this. In many other arenas of school law, we're able to tell you a lot more because there's been cases litigated. And we're able to say, here's our interpretation, here's our guess, here's what's happened in other jurisdictions, and here's what's happened in Georgia. Complaints just tend to come in local disputes, and we've had several, so we can give you some examples, but there's not a methodical analysis that we're able to latch onto, and so we're in the dark as far as that goes, and so we can't give you a lot of clear answers about, well, you can do this and you can't do this. There's just a lot of gray area. I don't really anticipate any problems as far as this is concerned. I think the first couple our first 10 years of districts could do SPLOST initiatives, there was a lot of questions, a lot of people who didn't like the idea of the education tax, would just file complaints and oppose it. I don't feel like you have that atmosphere, not so much anymore, and that's a good thing because we don't want board members to fall into any traps and have to deal with the diversion, or any employees either, of having to deal with complaints. But we want to give you what that looks like when it happens.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you said that, no personal opinion, but what if, talking to someone and they ask you for your personal opinion, such as, well, how do you feel about it, or what will you do? That requires your opinion. How would you address that?
I think it depends on whether you are on the clock or off the clock as an employee, right? So if you are, I guess, clocked in, I'm not sure exactly what your role is.
I'm an employee.
Okay, so if you are clocked in, I would say, let me get back to you this afternoon. Yeah. Let me call you back, I'll send you a text message this evening, and let you know what I think. And then when you let them know what you think, you might just want to say, this is my personal opinion. So, does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so we've mentioned this. You can't use school resources either. We'll touch on a few cases that came up a while back where people were using district printers, copiers, fax machines to create opinion-based literature about philosophy. On district property, so this means don't hang or display flyers, posters that say vote yes or vote no. Don't do it on district property because that is a district resource. You can't require an employee to say, I support or I oppose. It's up to you. Here's a list of things you cannot do. We've gone over most of these. And this gets down into a little bit of the weeds here, but there are things that I know when I was a teacher I may not have thought, oh, this is a district resource. Like mailing lists of students or employees, but that is something that when you think through it is a district resource. Okay, so here's the two-part test we talked about. Is it a violation? So are you using district money or resources, and are you expressing an opinion, or are you giving impartial information? These are some common violations. These first two are going to be more on the part of organized campaigns for a SPLOST issue. First three really. First four really. And also first five. So unless you're working on a campaign with a group, these won't really apply to you as an individual. For a SPLOST campaign anyway. Okay, so here's what happens when you do the don'ts. So someone can file a complaint against you, and this is just the process of how that works. This is a little more informal. So when someone files a complaint, the committee will look into it, or the commission will look into it and see, okay, is there any merit to this? You you have a certain amount of time to respond. And then in the course of their investigation, if the commission uncovers additional violations, they have to notify you of that and give you time to respond as well. There's a preliminary hearing, and if they think a violation has occurred, it will go to a more formal hearing process. And here are the penalties. And if there's a criminal violation that's uncovered in the process, you can be accountable for the consequences of a misdemeanor. So Clem mentioned that most of the time these don't go really to hearing that results in a resolution. So since 2017, there have been 40 complaints filed. The vast majority of those have been resolved by consent order, which is where the commission just sort of issues a document that says, okay, we found this violation, you agreed to do this to remedy the situation, or an administrative dismissal, which means there wasn't enough of an issue for them to even really look into it further. There have been no rulings on merits. So here are some examples of complaints. Okay, so donating excess school board campaign contributions to a SPLOST campaign committee, using a fax machine, holding a joint campaign fundraiser, displaying a poster in the lobby of the school, and then displaying SPLOST promotional sheets.
Unfortunately, those are pretty straightforward violations. What would concern me a little more would be these gray areas, board members making comments, school officials and teachers saying, you know, here's what the SPLOST contains. And so fortunately, there has not been complaints in those areas. So I think we're in pretty good shape.
So in preparing for this, we were reading back through some cases from sort of 1999 and 2003. There haven't been a whole lot of these, but there was one issue where 2 board members wore a button supporting a SPLOST initiative at a board meeting. Those were administratively dismissed.
That's an example of something I would not do.
Yeah.
I would advise you not to do. It's just not worth it, even though it was dismissed and it didn't amount to anything. It's probably not worth it. It probably doesn't get any votes anyway.
That is not even serious. I wouldn't go there. They do dirty stuff.
They do. So that's sort of all the information we have for you. Please let us know if you have questions. We didn't want to read the slides to you, but very unfortunately, sometimes giving you legal advice involves just pushing information on you, because if you have the experience, it might be something that's a little
And Jordan, let's hand those out in case you guys want those to be able to refer to as a resource. Are there any questions?
Just the excessive, not that this would even come into play, but the you use excessive school board contribution. What is the definition of excessive?
There are actually limits in statute of how much money can be. Yes. I don't know what it is, but it's going to be thousands of dollars. I would say if you have any questions or you're thinking about doing something, also just run it by me. If you're concerned, one of the defenses you can have is you rely on counsel in doing what you did. So that's always an available strategy.
What
I will use that defense if I have to. Okay, well, thank you very much. That's all we have.
I just wanted to share, you all should have gotten the email we sent from all our stakeholders about the do's and don'ts.
You wouldn't. No, you couldn't do it. You wouldn't do it. Because you didn't have that. I had never heard of it.
We're finishing up bottom, correct?
Correct.
Bottom, and we're proposing 7.
Correct. Good morning. We'll be very quick, and this is exactly what we want to do today, give you an update on SPLOS 5 and give you the proposed program for SPLOS 6. So I'm going to give you handouts and summaries. All the supporting documents will be presented on the board, as well as share a copy for you guys on the e-board. So we'll start off with revenues. We have roughly $62 million in the bank. Future SPLOS revenues for the remaining 18 months are about $72 million, based off an average of $4 million. And feel free to ask questions at any time that you may have. Delta Foundation grant. I'm projecting $17.9 million of revenues coming from Delta. We've received 2 payments from them, one being $954,000 and the other roughly over $1 million.
Is this prior to the event or post?
So this is prior to the agreement, so let me show you how this is being calculated. Delta has agreed to provide grants until December of 19. It's basically based off their fuel consumption, roughly $48 million, average price of $2.25, and we get 1% off of those funds. So
We
that's
should try to get a percentage off their baggage fees.
Right.
We make a
They're
lot of money.
making a lot on that. And they're going up here.
Again, we received 2 payments this fall, and usually by the 8th of the month when they.
Which is being applied to the SPLOS 5.
Correct.
Oh, we're allocating it to SPLOS. Gotcha.
All right, the next item for our revenue is Georgia DOE reimbursements. Our team and I have worked together with the DOE to get receipt funds. We got $17 million allocated there from fiscal years 18, 19, 20 applications. You guys have already approved those applications. Next week, we should be getting a check for about $5 million associated with the East Clayton Elementary School project. At December's board meeting, I'll be sending you guys resolutions closing out past projects, and another $1 million will be coming in. Total revenues, remaining revenues is $169 million. Any questions before we go to expenditures? Our part expenditures, items listed there are just the open contracts and the remaining balances. Pretty straightforward. Our team is working to finish those projects out. The highlighted projects, Mount Zion Elementary, Brown Elementary, and Point South Middle. Our intent is to bring to you guys Point South Middle in December, the bid results, and Brown and Mount Zion will be in March.
What are you doing with Point South?
Again?
What are you doing with Point South?
Renovating the existing facility. So we're going to put air in the gym, replace the roof, upgrades to low voltage systems.
And it's gonna cost $10 million?
Yes, sir. A roof alone is going to be $3 million.
How old is Point South?
I can get that information to you. All right. Moving on. The next group of categories are items outside of construction, technology budget, transportation, books, software, and those are the remaining balance associated with those accounts. Next group of highlighted items, sort of giving you an idea of where we're going in 2019. We want to begin design of the Lovejoy Elementary School, the College Career Academy, as well as the Morrow High School. So these numbers only reflect the design costs. I want to have a conversation about Morrow High School.
It's moving, right?
Correct.
It is.
Correct. So we are proposing the Steel Road site adjacent to East Clayton Elementary School. So we've done a conceptual site plan. It's not designed, just to give you guys an idea of how it would, the facility will look on this footprint. As you can see, you have a 2-story structure. We're thinking about 2,000 FTE. You'll have your athletic fields, tennis fields, parking. Get your bearing, this is Stagecoach Road. This is Steel Road, that Steel Road is currently being developed. And Animal Block is further down, and here's East Clayton Elementary School. One thing I want to consider and recommend is, notice here, we're not saying gymnasium associated with that we are spending nearly $400,000 a year on graduations. I think this would be a unique opportunity to sort of construct a larger seating capacity facility. Typically, a gymnasium sits about 2,000. If the board is willing, we want to propose a space that seats roughly 5,000 to 6,000.
That's a great idea.
$80 million. $80 million. So the idea is for a high school, $55 million. Henry County High School is the closest comp. For a multi-use facility, it's roughly $25 million. I think if we sort of share some of these large block spaces, your cafeteria, your media center, and your gymnasium, again, it's very early on, but I think we could sort of get something unique to this area.
Dr. Beasley, will we be using that as an enterprising entity or something?
Is the arena alone costing $80 million?
No, the combined project.
Combined school.
So will we market it as an enterprising system?
It will be available for that, because it will seat up to 6,000.
Absolutely.
We'll be able to do our graduations, and then, of course,
Just a question.
and then, you know, we have the classroom space, and we want to do conferences.
Just a question. Is that in the middle of the county?
No.
What was that?
Ronnie can answer that better than I.
No, it's northeast.
So how does that,
Logistically, you mean for
right,
what?
for, I mean, where everybody's
The
coming
road
from?
is very
accessible.
It's very accessible. You're right
And
next to
it's-
75 to 35.
It's more accessible there, because you have Steel Road, and you got, what's that?
And
road,
Block.
Anvil Block Road.
Mark, you come right up to 675.
Right off 25, 35, close to
Which
the
is not
airport.
busy. No, but I'm saying, I'm sure you went past the exit before, right?
Can I ask a question?
Yes, extremely accessible.
Okay, so you're saying that the gym for that school is going to hold 6,000 people?
Correct.
Okay, I guess my only issue with that, I don't know, I guess I probably would prefer to just give the school a gym and just build a facility separate.
But it's too expensive. So that we gotta maximize the spaces that we do have.
Well, I guess if I could conceptualize how it's gonna look.
Here we go.
Because,
So
so which one of them is it?
So this is a college arena. It seats about 5,000. So typically our high school gyms, you have seating on one side. As you see, it sort of circles the entire area. You'll have a walking track around as well.
And remember, Ms. Gore, remember we used to talk about auditorium. So this gives you the use of an auditorium and a gym, but you're maximizing the space.
Yeah, I know, but I guess what I'm kind of wanting was something like the Performing Arts Center, with that capacity and actually, I mean, I guess I would just have to see some more things in there, because I guess I would like to see like the availability to, to have like banquet hall rooms, that type of stuff as well.
And the next step is program, and that's where we have these type of discussions, figure out what are all the space needs, and we'll bring all this together. This is just, in theory, are we comfortable going in this direction?
Mark, do you have a model that you're using right now? Is there a model someplace else that you got an idea of where you might go?
Yeah, Copeland University. So you see, this is where else where they hold their graduation, so it works. I like the idea of how the gymnasium is adjacent to the athletic fields. We're sort of looking out. And again, we haven't developed the program yet.
I just want to rent it out and make some other money.
We're gonna rent it out to Delta for their programs and get our money back. We're paying, they're charging extra for that.
Yeah, a lot of old school.
So when you put that on that property, since that property is supposed to hold 3 schools, do we have enough room left to put the other school there? And, okay, so if that's it over there, and we're talking about having that many people come, where's our parking and all that type of stuff at?
So again, conceptual site drawing, parking is along here and along here. The original site plan that I inherited had an elementary school and middle school suites here in the high school. again, I'm not, given traffic flow, I'm not really a fan of having 3 schools that congested in one area. So we're putting the track and athletic fields in here. That's another conversation we need to have, in the program's not developed, you know. How developed do we want to go with our athletic fields? Do we want to do a stadium, turf? Again, to answer your question, there is some space here to say, okay, how are we going to develop this area here? These are wetlands, so there's a stream here, so we won't be able to develop this portion here. But there's a portion here that's.
Oh, so actually, we get outlets ours, but we really couldn't do much
Right.
with that anyway.
Correct, there's a body of water here with a little stream here, and you have a buffer zone, and along here as well.
So you anticipate that sorry, Mark, go ahead.
Being that you have an arena and we're planning to have a lot of people in and out, are we considering parking there?
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, that's parking there.
I mean,
that's money.
And you got a residential area you wanna be mindful of, you got houses all around.
But
I think
in all actuality, if you had something going on at the arena, as long as the grade school didn't plan something for the same night, you could run a shuttle from the grade school over, and everybody could park at the grade school too.
So part of the concept is have a boardwalk between 2 schools, in this parking lot here, where you're traveling through the wetlands and you can get to the
But how many parking spaces do you have right now at the elementary school? The parking deck seems to me like I just don't, the parking would be.
If you think about our graduation,
Yeah,
cars in and out, how many cars come in and out? And so if we're gonna have our graduations there, you still gotta think about grandparents coming, parents coming, cousins.
So you got parking for 6,000 people like we've had at the Georgia International.
If we have that, then fine.
But you'll have more than, but this you'll have more than one access, and way to access.
And parking and traffic flow are part of the design process. And so we'll have solutions to these valid questions. But through experience, I can assure you that you won't need a parking deck. You'll have ample parking from here, here, here.
So you're taking that into consideration?
We'll take all that into consideration.
I was just, I'm going back inside the building. I think it's a wonderful idea, a good money maker for Clayton County Schools. But are we gonna use bleachers or seats?
That's what I'm saying.
I'd rather have seats, if we really wanna, make
Those
it.
were seats that we were looking at.
Yeah, that's why.
They look like bleachers to me.
Right, that's why.
I don't.
Yeah, that's why I was saying about the gym, that's the thing I don't like about, if it's gonna be
Those are
gym.
seats.
Those are seats.
Those are all seats.
Those are auditorium seats.
But I was looking down.
Well, then you
But
better
here,
get there on time,
Oh,
otherwise you
here,
get
I see what you're looking at.
but you're saying this is old?
This is early on.
Right.
Program.
So Robert, you're saying that we don't have to be too specific right today?
Correct.
All right, gotcha.
I'm saying you like the
We
idea.
just want you all to see that we've been thinking
We're
about
gonna have these
solutions
seats later.
to fix the graduation issue.
Right.
Well, see, when you said Henry County, the reason I say that is because I know they're building a new performing arts center.
Right.
And I like the concept of what they're doing. Only thing is, I don't think that their seats, that it's that big though.
No, it's smaller than our performance.
Right, it's smaller than ours, and I really do like our performing arts, and I just wish when we were building it, if somebody thought about a larger space, because I really do like that, and, having a nice industrial kitchen and all that type of stuff, and so you can really make some money.
Now, all the money that is made from that goes directly to us, right? Okay.
Okay, that just sounds like it's a favorable idea.
Love it.
All right, last thing, HVAC groups 3 and 4. This past summer, we're at 6 locations, and the project was successful. Maintenance has identified some additional spaces that need HVAC improvements, so we're going to work with them and have a second round of improvements. That includes the Kendrick Middle.
Are you talking about patching it up or fixing it?
Replacing the units, so brand new units. In addition to those 2 schools, Kendrick Middle and Kent Elementary, All remaining gyms that do not have air, we want to go ahead and one last week, and there are about 8 locations provide air to those gyms.
What are those locations?
I pulled that for you.
And while you at it, since I've been getting a lot of backlash about JW, is that what it is, JW Arnold? Is that the correct name of the school, Mr. Brown? Is it
Yeah.
JW Arnold? Going forward, if you all put these, marquees up, please make sure you have the whole name, because the Arnold Group, man, they have been giving me some heat about JW's name wasn't on the building, and then we didn't have the JW on the marquee. So please make sure you put the whole name on the building, and I would like you to see it Church Street. Y'all think y'all slick, y'all put that little marquee up, but it is not gonna get it. That thing y'all put in front of church. Y'all got those nice, electronic marquees. Everywhere else, I would like one over there with the next slot.
And don't forget that other marquee for the mock trial at Jonesboro High School.
Okay.
And I do want to say that I'm glad that, you know, in your planning that you're doing now, that you're actually, one thing that I really have felt like in the past that we really wasted SPLOST money on is because what we used to do is that we just would have a SPLOST and we would include every school in the SPLOST and just go in the building and do something to say we did it. And I think we messed up some stuff that was being, like I know at King Elementary School, I remember they went in and did something to it that didn't need to be done. I went over to Huey pretty much, I'm looking at just, you know, you put nice tile and all that type of stuff in the floor. But I think that if we put, you know, I think we're on the right path now. We're really doing projects that we really need instead of just, you know, spending money just to be spending money when we have some major projects that we could be doing.
I think we also need to put signs out front saying, you know, your SPLOST dollars at work. And let people know, because, you know, I tell people, oh, well, that school costs $22 million. What do you mean a school costs $22 million? Because that's what a school costs. You know, they don't have that concept of what.
And remind them with their presidential tariff, that 22 billion can go up because of the cost of aluminum and steel.
Right.
Yeah, but I really think that people need to know, hey, this school's being done. If there's something on the front of the building, like you go by Arnold and you can tell that they've painted something, but you don't, when I drive by, I see the new playground equipment in the back. And I'm proud of that, you know, and I just think that we need to.
But you all remember, when you all have conversations with your constituents about SPLOST, we keep on the website an updated SPLOST construction link. And Ron is going to show you he can, but it has all of the projects, it provides updates consistently. So if you want to refer them or direct them to the website, it's right there for everyone to see.
Ron, you'd be surprised to know who never, ever touched a computer.
I'm just saying, it's there. It's there.
As well as the signs on our projects.
So is on that website are the plans for Jonesboro High School on there?
Yes, sir.
Because I had a gentleman ask me the other day about that.
Yeah, I'll show it right now. Go to the construction.
The department's construction.
SPLOST. Should show all the current projects, and if you go to Jumpstart, and you hit this one, it'll show you the rendering.
Oh, okay. Well, I need to tell him. And you don't need a Google Drive for that? No, I'm asking because remember when you sent that to us, we couldn't open it.
As well as the bid results, all in the process.
And that's in the current, that's gonna be in the current location.
Jumper?
Yeah.
Yes.
But they don't have enough space up there.
So, the new auxiliary, as well as
The location.
that's the existing.
Gotcha.
No, this is one, Jonesboro, this is Jonesboro. Right
Gotcha.
over here, near the.
So it's almost like expanding out. It's almost like.
Correct, they're
Back a little bit for Foxborough.
Make sure we can wash all the windows. And all that kind of stuff with these pretty designs.
We've been working on the window thing. A lot of windows, and we just don't like them looking dingy. do we?
Man, Mr. James been on us about that.
Continuing on.
Everybody okay? Y'all good?
I got a question. Who's the construction staff?
Myself and five of the members. Myself and five of the members. There's two admins.
Said construction staff. At the last,
But is it you or somebody else?
that's what I'm.
That's our staff, like an employee.
Him and 5 other people, right?
Correct.
Okay.
But you're talking over a 5-year period of time. That's a 5-year.
Yeah, correct. All right, before we go to the next page, remind you all of the Steel Road improvements. Give you a quick update. The county's committing have the intersection of Stagecoach and Steel open by January when the kids return, so that whole road will be developed. The SPLOST intergovernmental agreement that you guys will vote on that Monday, that's $133,000 there. At the very bottom, we have $886 million received to date. And if you add the projection plus the delta revenues, we're looking at $276 million. And the referendum cap is $280. So if revenues go up, we'll have $4 million left to play there. Before we go to the next sheet, I want to look at the $5.8 million in red. That's showing that we're spending more than revenues coming in. That's the Jonesboro High School excess that you're all aware of. That's going to be funded through SPLOST 6.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So that will be carried over to the slide 6.
Correct.
So Ron, I got to go back to this construction staff. Your department is being paid out of SPLOST?
Yes. My department and one account.
Which means his current salary, what he's getting.
Right, I understand that. I'm just making sure we're paying that department out of SPLOST.
Salaries and benefits.
Salary and benefits.
Make sure.
So technically, you took it out of general fund, so that actually is a
I think
great
it's always
thing.
been
It's always been that way.
Whenever you do SPLOST, you can pay the staff associated with it.
Good?
Yeah.
Okay, so I got a question, how y'all determine which schools need to be done? Which one's been up the longest?
That's the 10th time we've
That's
done
like the
it.
first one today.
I haven't heard it today.
No, I mean, this week when we be.
Oh, okay,
when we be
you're
doing
right.
community meetings.
Yeah, see how long it.
Because I'm coming behind you on that one. Go ahead.
Neglected on our end.
I'm saying that.
On our end.
That's true.
I'm just saying, my son go to you, it's like 9 trailers out there, they've been there for a long time, so I want to know.
Well, let's say this, Ronnie
How
can
y'all
say it better than I
determine which
can.
schools getting fixed?
Like Ms. Gory just said, your board member just said that we're doing a better job instead of
Yeah.
piecemealing. We are doing
Yeah.
better. And so what Ronnie is showing you is our new efforts to, like, when I came into the district, they were doing whatever they did at Unidos. Whatever it was, clearly wasn't sufficient.
Right.
We are stopping that approach and we're fixing, like, remember the proposal for Jonesboro was just a lipstick job. We said, no, we're not doing a lipstick job. And so Ronnie and his team is working with all of us as a team to make sure we do better so we don't have to keep hearing like Unidos situations. We spent all that money, but it wasn't sufficient.
I ain't got people on saying that one of the
So Ronnie can explain that.
It's I don't want to say, but sort of you guys do.
No.
We advocate.
We elaborate.
Right, we advocate.
Every 5 years, we do a local sweep line. The state comes in and they assess all our facilities. And not just us, but also my counterparts in Atlanta Metro. We come in, we bring them, we show them the needs, and they make a recommendation of a priority list. We make recommendations to the superintendent makes recommendations to you all, and we try to follow that recommendation list as best we can. We just follow data. You know, it's the needs, the age of the facility. I shared earlier that We started with the older schools first, at the schools that were built in the 50s. Now the schools that were built in the 90s, the Lovejoy High School and Mount Zion High Schools, now they're about 30 years old. So it's now their time to
So based off of that, because that's what I was going to ask you, based off of that and what Clem shared with me with the 5-year SPLOSH deals, Mount Zion, being a 30-year-old school,
Mount Zion
high school, I'm sorry, could basically sit on it. They're really definitely going to wait for that 5 years to go by. There's no question about that. Am I correct?
They just had us,
So we had
stuff put on it a couple
the
years
age
ago.
Say it again.
They just had an extension put onto that a few years ago.
Which goes to Dr. Beasley's, which has nothing to do with you, but goes to Dr. Beasley's theory that we probably didn't do that right because you're putting the lipstick on a building.
It wasn't done right because you were supposed to have put for that performing arts school that you built across the street.
Right.
Was not a part of the SPLOSH plan. It was supposed to have been two floors added to Mount Zion. That's why Mount Zion got screwed.
Gotcha.
And then you put a brand new school up across the street that wasn't supposed to be over there. The other thing was you built elite scholars. We have not built any other charter schools. They really should have had their own building, but it was the politics that was involved, the people that were involved with doing elite scholars.
Makes sense.
That's why you just now getting East Clayton, because that land that was over there was about years before we even came on the board.
Okay, I got you.
So that's why I was saying that, with Dr. Beasley and them, they're really doing a better job because it really messed up everything. Because I'm just gonna say, I am very ashamed of our, I'm glad, we're gonna get new Jones, whatever, but I'm very ashamed that in Forest Park, you have Unitos. We spent all that money on Unitos, but you still got half the school in trailers outside. And we don't know what we're gonna do with it. You got Forest Park Middle School, just a little mess, but they've done real good with keeping up the facility. And to me, what that says to me is, especially when you look at the Hispanic population, what it says to me is like we don't really care about them. And I'm ashamed that we're not over there, doing, but I see we got the new middle school, and I think that, I'm hoping that's Forest Park. Because I just think it's just really unfair that in certain areas, and here again, we're gonna put this will be, as to me, like 3 brand new schools in Jonesboro, Stillwell, Elite Scholars, Jonesboro, and then they still sitting over there, and Huey is just sitting up there with mass trailers because, of the population. I guess we need to do a school zone or something, but it was not like that before.
Is there I mean, I think you just alluded to that, but is there like a master assessment that we can do?
Well, that's the facilities assessment.
Right.
And that's why we're coming to you all, and we've been,
right.
I've been here, we've been very transparent about the projects. We try to adhere to the facility assessment based on need, age, etc., safety, all those priority indicators, if you will. And we try to come to you all so everyone at the table is informed, can weigh in. We may go back and tweak our recommendation based on your feedback, but we are mindful. I don't want anyone to think that we're overlooking any community. We want to make sure every need is met, but we do have more need than we have resources. And so we're trying to plan better, do better, and then once we get through one SPLOSH, handle the next set with the next SPLOSH, and as you can see, we've already begun the rolling list for SPLOSH 7.
That's my question. Can you speak on that just a second?
Well, the point is, since we have more need than we do resources, there's no sense in us acting like the whole state will be non-existent in 5 years.
Correct.
And so we're letting everybody know now that as we continue to address these needs, as funds are available, these are the things that we need everybody to be aware of. So it becomes less political, but it's driven based upon what needs and what kids need.
And what are the steps that we're taking specifically on what you're talking about? What are the steps that we're taking to jump that 7 SPLOSH? We know that that's way, we're not even thinking about it. Meaning that, what assessments are we making?
So the local facility plan is a living document. We don't do it every 5 years. Every year, we're assessing where our needs are and preparing for that.
So you're saying we can't start anticipating that 7 for Mount Zion or for the schools in which
I'm saying we are.
We are doing that. And how do we get in the loop of that? Like how do we, so for instance, Ms. Williams may say, Huey is important to me and I want to make sure that I'm going to my constituents.
So he's already, he has a list, we've heard about Huey in the we've heard about Huey twice, trailers, etc. That's information that we're looking at, but we have to look at the Huey situation in light of what we've done recently,
Right.
in light of what the current need is,
Right.
and in light of where potentially it could come up again in the future. Those are all the things
And
that
where do we get the answers for that? Like what I'm saying is that everything you're saying, I'm totally understanding. All I'm saying is as a politician, as I'm out there with my community, I want to tell them, hey, you might have missed SPLOST 6, but we got you on the radar for SPLOST 7.
So if you look at SPLOST 7, as you can see,
Not 7.
Well, we got SPLOST 6
Right.
projects delineated.
Right.
We're already starting to add items for SPLOST 7, which is after SPLOST 6 if a referendum passes.
And where is that
It's
being
at the
rolled?
bottom of, it's right under
I'm trying to
SPLOST.
get to
I'm
it.
sorry, maybe you didn't see it.
Gotcha, okay. That's what I was asking. I wasn't
So that's
challenging
out,
you.
no, I understand, you
Right.
didn't see it.
Right.
You can see we have a rolling list that we've already
Gotcha,
started.
gotcha. So as a politician, we can look at that and say, they're looking into
We're
it.
trying to plan ahead very, strategically.
I just got 5 off the list.
Gotcha.
And 5 off the list, 5 minutes ago. For example, like the fields that we have at the stadiums, we know the lifespan of those fields. So we know that for SPLOST 7, we're going to replace those fields.
Gotcha, that's what I was asking.
5 minutes, so we need, you guys know the program for SPLOST 6. You see there $6 million for Jonesville, for Slimau. Now, next thing you'll see are the construction costs associated with the Lovejoy Elementary, College Career Academy, and Marl High. Quick discussion about the College Career Academy. The thought process there is to utilize the site for old Marl High School as the College Career Academy. So originally I had those dollars a little bit higher, but I think that we'd be successful to renovate and modify that existing structure and save some money, some dollars there.
Because that land fell through that you were looking at in 1941, right?
Correct.
We wasn't paying that much.
Too expensive.
Well, I don't have a problem with that, I just saying, they didn't come back and
I asked earlier this year about a police precinct because of the safety of some things that we have, because of the safety of some items that we have. I don't think we're secure in that particular building, because if somebody get in there and get in that room, we will have a immediate nightmare.
I have a
And it's, soon as you walk in the door, turn down the hall, the door is right there.
I think that's the situation. I think if I'm familiar with the weapons situation, we can address that with some renovations over there, but I don't see them getting a new facility.
I have a question. We're talking about this building on the corner right here,
I think we put it up.
the credit union over here on the side. Credit unions come with great big safes, I know, I work with them. And have we considered making that, these things? The credit union, it should have a great big safe in it. A great,
They're making that the
the police, because we
Is
could,
that big enough?
I don't know.
Look at it, but it's possible, but once we establish that it's ours, then I guess we can do whatever we want to do with it.
Well, I think once we go sit on it for 3 days, then it's ours, isn't it?
Let's move on.
I've hit all my highlights, so are there any questions?
Even though you have your list up here for the 7, and you got your term, I think you're missing a stadium. You're missing Southern Crescent.
Where are you at?
There's no Southern Crescent, and this time when you put some turf down, don't have that little asphalt around the thing. I need y'all to go talk to the people in APS or someplace else with a nice track around it, because for the money that we spent, we should have had because we could have just laid some tar down ourselves.
The reason's not there. Semi-pressure turf was in 2-3 years ago. The lifespan is about 12 years.
Gotcha.
So, but whereas Terra and 12 Oaks were replaced maybe 10 years ago, so, 7-8 years ago. So that's why,
No, y'all finally put something in Southern Crescent. Now, come on, now, I had to fight to get that.
Check your records.
Dr. Healy just left in 2012. He just put that down, probably a year before, in 2011.
what's that, 7 years ago, so 5 years from now, after Class 6, those
It's gonna
12
be
years.
that age, you said it ain't over there.
No, that's not what I said. I said there's no Southern Crescent down there. So, just put it all down there, why you, all at one time. Because if you've done it all at one time, see, that's what I'm talking about, that discrimination. Do it all at one time.
Well, I mean, thank you so much.
If he wants, I'll let Dr. Beasley make some closing remarks.
I don't even know if I have anything else to say, but thank you all. It's been a great morning. Hopefully you got the information you needed. You know I'm here if you have questions. Staff will be more than willing to entertain your questions, but I believe we're doing the right work. We're blessing.
Good job,
And we'll keep
Good job.
moving forward.